Chapter 792. Since he had said so, Mu Xiangshan led his men out of the hospital. A few seconds later, they saw Ji Huai and the others coming out of the hospital. Obviously, Lu Xian had something to say to Ji Sikai. It was not easy for an ordinary person like Ji Sikai to have a relationship with a formation master like Lu Xian. Xiao Jin sat on a chair in the corridor of the hospital and rubbed her chin. She had a sense of indifference throughout the whole process. She was just here to watch the show. Mu Qi Lian was muttering to Mu Qi Chu about Ji Sikai's words of suspecting someone of harming him. After Ji Huai came out, he looked at Ji Pingon in a bad mood. Third uncle, as you can see, he has no self-awareness now. We've seen the surveillance video. The car skidded on its own. The other party's driver didn't cause trouble, but he insisted that someone tried to frame him. Ji Pingon glanced at Ji Huai, then at Xing Jiaobai and Shang Yiran behind him. He sighed and said, "Don't talk so much." The Ji family was in an awkward situation. Not to mention his own son, Ji Sikai's father was not a good person either. Why were the second generation all such bastards? They had caused a lot of trouble. Shang Yiran suddenly whispered, "Dad, I want to go back with Jiaobai first." Ji Huai looked back at him with guilt in his eyes. "Okay, I'll ask someone to send you back." Since Shang Yiran's leg was broken by Ji Sikai, he had become taciturn and did not argue with Ji Sikai about it. Ji Huai felt very guilty towards the siblings. After all, they were the children of the woman he liked, and she died when he liked her the most. He missed her and treated them well. It was a pity that Ji Sikai's temper was so bad that he refused to let Shang Yiran and Xing Jiaobai into the Ji family. Otherwise, they would be surnamed Ji now. Seeing that Ji Huai had gone to send the siblings off, Muzilian sat beside Xiao Jin and whispered to Muzichu, "That's fucking awesome." His mistress's child was his only child, and he even said that his eldest son was crazy. Muzichu glared at Muzilian. "Watch your words." "Muzilian, what did I say?" He then turned to look at Xiao Jin. "I was right, wasn't I? Isn't the Ji family pretty awesome? Look at the mess in Ji Sikai's family, and your own grandfather." "Ah!" Before he could finish his sentence, Muzichu stepped on his foot. Muzilian's scream attracted the attention of several adults, but Xiao Jin didn't have any thoughts. Ji Pingon looked over and sighed enviously. "Your family is still the best. Qiao Fei and Jinming are both good children. Their children don't make people worry." The three sons of the Mu family were all outstanding. Even the adopted one happened to be a member of the Ji family. Most importantly, the Mu family had raised him very well. How could they not be envious? Qiao Fei laughed awkwardly. Mu Xiangshan put his hands behind his back and said, "That's from your point of view. From my point of view, my son isn't a good person. He's an unfilial son who goes against his father." "Qiao Fei, old man, who are you talking about?" Sarcastic. Ji Pingon looked at Qiao Fei, who was so aggrieved that he couldn't speak, and laughed. "Don't joke around. You don't know how many people are envious of you now. How many families can be as happy as your Mu family?" Qiao Fei hurriedly nodded. "It's all thanks to my good education. Mu Xiangshan. You won't blush." Chapter 793. Ji Pingon was envious of the Mu family's atmosphere. It was understandable that Xiao Jin didn't want to come back. The Mu family went back after talking to Ji Pingon. On the way back, Xiao Fei couldn't help but say, "What's wrong with Ji Sikai's father? His eldest son is his first wife's son. He's the legitimate young master of the Ji family. Why does he treat the child of a mistress like a treasure?" Mu Xiangshan said coldly, "If he didn't like it, would he have gone to look for the mistress? Musilian agreed. This kind of thing happens a lot. My brother's parents even have their own lovers, everyone. Xiao Fei sighed and said, fortunately, my husband never does these things. Otherwise, I would have dumped him long ago. No one said anything. Ji Sikai's sudden car accident didn't have much to do with the Mu family. Xiao Jin stayed at home for 2 days and went back to school when it was time for school. These 2 days were exam time. Other than exams, there were no classes. When Xiao Jin was in school, she began to feel that someone was watching her. But it wasn't a student. She activated the array and directly confirmed the source. It was a middle-aged man from the school's cafeteria department. He looked simple and honest, but he was quite tall and thin. He looked a little weak, like a bamboo pole that could be blown away by the wind. He was very ordinary in school and wouldn't come to the cafeteria window to get food. Perhaps many students didn't know of his existence. Such a person was too ordinary. Whatever he did, he was the most dangerous. Xiao Jin sighed at the school. She didn't expect him to be from Yanhui, so it meant that Yanhui's feng shui was really bad. She felt that if this incident really blew up, the new principal would probably have a heart attack. After this person was in charge of his own procurement work every day, he spent his free time in the staff dormitory. Occasionally, he would use other work to come out and monitor Xiao Jin. He should have been watching Xiao Jin recently. If he had been monitoring Xiao Jin in the past, she would have felt it. When he saw Xiao Jin return to her dormitory, the ordinary-looking man's lips curled into a smile that made people feel a chill down their spines. He carried 2 big bags of vegetables and left the school through the staff passageway. He took the subway and slept all the way. An hour later, they arrived at the edge of the imperial capital. Xiao Jin had been to Qingqing district before. The house that Su Rong left for her was here. Normally, the people who lived here were ordinary people. He walked to a very old neighborhood, took out his key, opened the door, and closed the big iron door. With a bang, the whole place was silent. The place looked shabby, but the soundproofing was very good. It was a narrow house with only 1 bedroom and 1 living room. He opened the bedroom door and saw a long-haired boy on the bed with an iron chain. Seeing him return, the boy was unusually excited. He made strange noises at him as if he could not speak normally. The middle-aged man looked at him, but his eyes were loving. Good boy, just you wait. Dad has chosen the most perfect bride for you this time. She will be yours soon. There's no need to keep the defective products in the basement. He didn't know if the boy understood, but he called out happily and saliva flowed out of the corner of his mouth. Bride. Bride, yes. The man touched his head and smiled dotingly. She's your bride. Chapter 794. Now that she knew the place, Xiao Jin wanted to know what was hidden behind it. Of course, she would take action directly. The next day, she deliberately went out of campus. She just went out for a stroll and ate some fast food. Then, she took the subway to Qingqing district. The man didn't know that Xiao Jin had a house in Qingqing district. He thought that Xiao Jin had discovered something and was a little nervous. However, when he saw Xiao Jin enter a residential area in Qingqing district, he reacted. There were no security measures in this residential area. Anyone could enter if they wanted to. After a while, the middle-aged man saw Xiao Jin come down with a bag of things. When she went up just now, there was nothing. It was more proof that Xiao Jin had a house here. In fact, many questions could be asked if one thought about it carefully. For example, why did Xiao Jin suddenly come here today? However, he knew that if he didn't make a move now, he wouldn't have such a good opportunity. There weren't many surveillance cameras in Qingqing district, especially in this residential area, which was too old. There were basically no surveillance cameras installed. The neighborhood was quite quiet at night. When Xiao Jin walked to an empty corner, the man quickly rushed out and covered Xiao Jin's mouth and nose with a towel. Xiao Jin couldn't let him touch her, so she used a trick to make the man think that she had fainted and carried Xiao Jin away. In fact, he walked in front like a block of wood, and Xiao Jin followed behind him. Then, they entered the residential area where he lived. The environment here was worse than the residential area where Xiao Jin had just lived. After she followed in, the door opened, and an indescribable smell came over. The smell was a little strange. It was a very strong smell of medicine, and it smelled bitter. It was probably Chinese medicine. The room was too small. When Xiao Jin went in and saw the person, she knew why she was guided here. In the innermost bedroom sat a chained boy. His hair was long enough to reach his waist. He didn't take care of it carefully, so his long hair was a little dry. However, it didn't have a bad smell. It was obvious that he was well served. He was awake and setting up a building block. When he saw the middle-aged man come back, he immediately clapped his hands happily and shouted vaguely, "Dad, Dad." His father was in a daze, as if he couldn't come back to his senses. It turned out that he was a fool. Xiao Jin looked at the boy and stared at his heart. This was because there was a formation point in the boy's heart. It was very obvious that he was the same as Meng Qingyu and the others. They were all people who knew how to set up formations. And he was actually a fool. Xiao Jin looked at him in silence. The fool also saw him, and his eyes lit up. He clapped and shouted happily, "Beautiful, beautiful, bride paper, bride paper." At the same time, Xiao Jin heard a faint sound coming from a place not far away. The faint sound of a girl crying could be heard. Clearly, the girls who had been kidnapped in the missing girls case were all down there. Xiao Jin glanced at the message that she hadn't deleted. She had a feeling that the person who sent the message and the middle-aged man who was following her were different. The middle-aged man didn't have such sentiments. He even wanted to turn Xiao Jin into a statue. It seemed like he had other motives. With this thought in mind, Xiao Jin snapped her fingers. The middle-aged man who was still in a daze instantly woke up. He turned his head almost subconsciously and saw Xiao Jin standing there perfectly fine. He looked a little shocked. Chapter 795. Are you surprised? Xiao Jin chuckled. His calm face seemed to emit an extremely holy glow in this environment. Why is he a fool? This sentence made the middle-aged man's face turn red. He looked at Xiao Jin angrily. He roared angrily and was about to rush towards Xiao Jin. Xiao Jin just took a step back. A stick in the room hit him directly, and he fell to the ground. Xiao Jin was not going to be polite to this person who kidnapped girls casually. As for this silly boy who was tied up in the room, seeing that his father was beaten, he seemed to be a little anxious, but he didn't know what to do. His expression collapsed, and he babbled anxiously on the bed, as if he was about to cry again. He could still distinguish some emotions. Xiao Jin looked at him and felt a little strange. "You. What are you doing?" Ping Song was lying on the ground. He felt a sharp pain in his body. He looked at Xiao Jin with fear and regret. He seemed to have found the wrong person. He found someone he should not have. Now that the matter was exposed, he and his son were done for. Xiao Jin said, "I won't do anything." He only looked at the silly boy. Although his hair was very long and he had been locked on the bed, he was clean. Seeing that Ping Song was lying on the ground and could not get up for a while, Xiao Jin went to the side of the bedroom. There was a door that was connected to the bathroom. There was a strange door here. After opening the door, there was an extremely dark basement. At the same time, there was a stench. The girls cried a little louder. When they saw the door suddenly open, everyone screamed in horror. When the lights in the basement were turned on, the glaring light forced them to close their eyes. Most of the time, they were locked here. They could not see the light, and there was only endless despair. Turning on the lights every day did not mean that it was a good time. To them, that person was like a devil. However, this time, when a girl tried to open her eyes, she saw a slender and beautiful girl. Her temperament was untainted by dust, as if she was the purest existence in the world. For a moment, the girl was stunned. Xiao Jin saw that the basement was very small. The three girls were squeezed together, all tied up by a metal chain. Other than her half-closed eyes, he heard her tremble when she opened the door, but she didn't cry. When they opened their eyes and saw Xiao Jin, they screamed madly, "Help, help!" Every time the door was opened, it was either food being delivered or the man throwing another girl down. There had never been a situation where a girl would be standing there unharmed. A glimmer of hope appeared in the girls' hearts. Seeing this, Xiao Jin immediately called the police. When Ping Song heard Xiao Jin calling the police, he roared hoarsely, but there was nothing he could do. Because he simply did not understand how things had developed to this point. He didn't even remember how he came back with Xiao Jin. He clearly wanted to kidnap this woman and make her his son's bride. However, what was going on? He lay on the ground and looked at his silly son on the bed. Tears flowed from his eyes, but there was no regret, only hatred for this world. When the girls heard Xiao Jin calling the police, they immediately cried emotionally. Chapter 796. A case was solved in Qingqing district. No one expected that the girls who went missing from Yanhui University were actually kidnapped to Qingqing district. Even though they were so far away, the police were still in disbelief and shock. The three girls were rescued. One of them was kidnapped not long ago and was a little mentally unstable. Only one of them managed to stay awake. The other one was also very anxious. She seemed a little manic and difficult to control. Their bodies had suffered some signs of violent abuse, but they had not been violated. This was a blessing in disguise. The girls' fragile nerves were tortured by fear and the dark environment. After they were rescued by the police, the only one who was awake confessed everything in the hospital while trembling. Ping Song was a logistics worker in the university. This job was not bad. Even if the salary was low, there was enough security. After all, this was Yanhui University. He was recruited because he worked hard at that time. However, Ping Song's psychological change did not change at once. No one knew that he came from a remote mountain village. More than 10 years ago, he had no choice but to leave home with his son. Because his son was a fool. His mother was also abducted. Ping Song was not a good person. He raped the other party and gave birth to his son. It was probably retribution. The child was born a fool. His mother ran away when he was not paying attention. Ping Song brought his son to the capital with the intention of looking for the child's mother. Because the child was a fool, he did not have the basic ability to take care of himself and survive. He was afraid that the school would not let him continue to work if they knew that he had a foolish son. Therefore, he rented a house far away. After all, the house price there was very cheap. He locked his son at home every day, day after day, year after year. He was also in Yanhui University. Every day, he saw those beautiful students. For a long time, his mentality gradually became more and more distorted. This society was so unfair. Why was his son an idiot? Why did he and his son live like rats crossing the street? When everyone knew that he had an idiot son, they would look at him with disgust and disgust. However, what did that child do wrong? The child grew up day by day, but he had never lived a normal life. Ping Song gradually had an idea in his heart. He wanted his son to live a normal life. He also wanted his son to have a wife. Therefore, he had the idea of kidnapping someone else. He kidnapped these female students because he wanted to take revenge. After all, his wife was a female university student. He was the culprit behind the disappearance case a year ago. He kidnapped 2 girls in one go, but the strange thing was that he was not discovered. The 2 girls had always been locked up at home. He had tied them up, but his silly son had no ability at all. He didn't know what to do, so he could only tie them up at home. They belonged to his son, so he didn't touch them. However, when he was upset, he would go in and beat them up. Sometimes, when he was at home, his silly son would be released. If he saw them being beaten, his son would rush over to stop them. This was what the kidnapped girl had said. At this point, her tears kept flowing. We know that he's a fool. He's innocent. The one who did something wrong is his father. His father is not a good person. He loved his son, but he kidnapped him and left a psychological shadow in his son's heart. Chapter 797. After Ping Song was arrested, he would be sentenced with irrefutable evidence. His son was left unattended. There were array points in his body. Xiao Jin used her connections with Yao to send him to a special institution. It was similar to a nursing home. Ping Song was silly and in his 20s. He didn't know anything, but he was kind. Xiao Jin didn't know why the array points were in his heart. Anyway, before she found all the array points, she had to keep an eye on him. As the person who called the police, Xiao Jin was suspicious, but she wasn't suspicious. When asked how she found out about Ping Song's kidnapping, Xiao Jin only said casually, "I know a little martial arts. When he wanted to kidnap me, I knew something was wrong. I resisted, and then I found out that he kidnapped those girls." Police. Her logic was perfect. They couldn't find any other mistakes. After all, Xiao Jin didn't commit a crime. After Xiao Jin returned home, the police didn't tell her family about it because they didn't want them to worry. But Xiao Jin still told Meng Qingyu and the others that she had found another person. Actually, they still didn't know why Xiao Jin had found them. Meng Qingyu, another one. Oh, young Qiulu, and it's a boy. Mo Jiang, is it a silly one? Big shot, yes. Meng Qingyu, big shot, it's really hard on you. Big shot, it's not hard. Anyway, Mo Jiang will take care of him in the future. Mo Jiang, Ping Song's son, was called Ping Yuan. Because of his identity and his stupidity, he was destined to be despised. Logically speaking, he was indeed innocent. But not many people sympathized with him. In such a complicated situation, no one had the right to judge whether he was pitiful or not. After Peng Yuan entered the orphanage, his head was shaved. Xiao Jin took Meng Qingyu to see him. In the courtyard, Peng Yuan was happily playing with several old people in his new white clothes. When Meng Qingyu saw Peng Yuan, he was a little curious. "Boss, why did you send him here?" Under normal circumstances, no one would care about Peng Yuan. She also found out the truth from Yao. She didn't sympathize with her father at all. He had to pay the price for his wrongdoings. Even when he asked to see Xiao Jin didn't pay any attention to him. Meng Qingyu's view of Peng Yuan was a little complicated. He felt that this fool was somewhat pitiful, but because of his father's matter, he could not sympathize with him. Now that Peng Yuan's hair was cut short, his face was revealed. He looked delicate and pretty. From this, it could be seen that his mother must be very beautiful. It was a pity. Meng Qingyu said, "Didn't you say he still has a mother? The police can help us find his mother, even though." Qiao Jin glanced at her and said, "You're also someone who came out of the abyss. Why do you have to push others into the abyss when you can solve this problem by taking advantage of the situation?" Meng Qingyu paused and immediately understood. Even if Ping Yuan was pitiful, his mother was even more pitiful. It wasn't easy for her to escape from Ping Song. She might be living a happy life somewhere now. If she couldn't bear to part with her son, she would have come back long ago. If Peng Yuan went to find her, he would probably only force her into a desperate situation. Some nightmares would only be nightmares for life. Chapter 798. Peng Yuan was a fool to begin with. His father had been imprisoned, and he might occasionally be sad when he could not see his father. However, asking him to think more than that was a little too manly. Putting him here was a convenient thing to do, and Qiao Jin didn't need to worry about his life. After all, she was in charge of Yang Qiulu and the others, but she usually did not care about what they did. There was a new message from Mo Jiang. She had successfully gone to the spirit group to take a look around. Just like Qiao Jin, she had officially become friends with Ji Mengmeng. Of course, Big Boss Missouri did not think so. She felt that she was enduring humiliation because of Qiao Jin's orders. To put it bluntly, she could use her own abilities to directly jump to the top of the spirit group. This also showed the difference between Mo Jiang and Qiao Jin. Qiao Jin was completely passive, while Mo Jiang was a little domineering. If not for Qiao Jin's suppression, she might not have been so peaceful after waking up. After all, she was an array formation master who was good at curses. Even if she had a conscience, she might not have one. In particular, she was carrying an order. She would probably only know what was going on after she recovered her memory. Recover her memory. Qiao Jin suddenly thought of this. Mo Jiang had also lost her memory when she was resurrected. However, the difference between Mo Jiang and her was that Mo Jiang had completely lost her memory, while Qiao Jin had only lost a targeted memory. It was impossible that she was stronger, but the memory she had lost was clearly targeted at something. As a result, clues had only started to emerge now. There were always some images in her mind. Now, it was confirmed that Song Yanqing was someone she had known for a long time. In that case, was losing her memory the necessary price to pay for her resurrection? Why was she different from Mo Jiang? Logically speaking, Mo Jiang had sacrificed 1,000 people, so the price he had to pay was greater than hers. However, Mo Jiang had not suffered any backlash. At this thought, Qiao Jin vaguely felt something. Thus, she decided to do an affirmative experiment. First, she directly summoned the nomological array. This time, her tone was more certain. Qiao Jin used the array formation to revive. He would lose his memories and suffer a karmic backlash. The law array reacted very quickly. A huge circular plate appeared in the air and slowly rotated a few times. Then, a line of words appeared. Not in accordance with the rules. Rules need to be modified. Qiao Jin, she raised her eyebrows and changed her words. Qiao Jin used an array formation to revive and suffered a karmic backlash. Conforms to the rules, Qiao Jin used the array formation to revive and will lose his memories. This time, the disc remained silent for a long time, as if it was hesitating about something. After a long time, he finally typed out a sentence. Not in accordance with the rules. Rules need to be modified. Mo Jiang used a formation to revive. 1,000 people were sacrificed to cancel out the karma. He will remember everything. Not in accordance with the rules. Rules need to be modified. Qiao Jin narrowed her eyes. She immediately understood. Her resurrection had nothing to do with amnesia. She had amnesia because of something else. However, if she did not know what it was, she would not be able to get an answer even if she directly asked about the rules. Mo Zhang's resurrection had cancelled out the backlash, but he had to pay the price of amnesia. The difference should be that the two of them had done different things. Qiao Jin could basically conclude that when she used the array formation to revive, she must have done something else that caused her to lose the relevant memories. This matter looked like it had something to do with Song Yanqing. After all, she remembered the matter of her sworn enemy. There was no reason why she would not remember Song Yanqing. Chapter 799. Qiao Jin didn't need to consult now, and the rule array didn't disperse on its own. Instead, a line of words popped up. Qiao Jin used the rule array to prove the rules, not in accordance with the rules. Qiao Jin, did it have a problem with that? Oh, it was a problem. It was like asking a question, but it didn't get anything in return, so it was a little dissatisfied. After all, in order to follow Qiao Jin back then, it had swallowed the only ultimate benevolent spirit seed that Qiao Jin had. However, if it could do it for free, of course it would choose to do it for free. There was no need to ask. Qiao Jin retracted the rule array and pretended not to see it. Just as she turned off the rule array, she suddenly felt something. Her consciousness started to decline again, her inspiration started to fade, and the familiar feeling started to surge again. This month's backlash had begun. However, since her trip to the spirit group, she had actually swallowed all the hundreds of demonized spirit seeds. Of course, most of them had been digested by Shang Yishan. Although there weren't many left, there were still more than 100. She was now a rich person, so she wouldn't be bothered by trifles. She would use what she had to use. She really couldn't be bothered to be in such a sorry state again. She directly used the demonized spirit seeds to offset the backlash this time. The feeling of backlash faded, and Qiao Jin suddenly seemed to understand something. Oh, it was like what Muzilian often said, the happiness of the rich. It felt a little strange, but it should be so. Speak of the devil and he will appear. Muzilian sneakily called Qiao Jin and asked where she was now. Qiao Jin said, I'm outside. What's the matter? Muzilian said directly, come and find me quickly. Zhong Yu brought his sister to find me, and I'm too embarrassed to refuse. Come over too. Why should I come over? Qiao Jin didn't want to pay attention to Muzilian at this time. I don't like crowded places. Mu Qilian said, please, I beg you. Please come. Qiao Jin, Muzilian was able to let go of things easily. Qiao Jin thought for a moment and said, give me an address. Muzilian quickly gave an address to Qiao Jin. It was the familiar cinema again. The only difference was that she had gone there alone the last time, but this time, they had agreed to go together. When they arrived, Muzilian and the others were already there. When In Shutin saw Qiao Jin, she waved happily. Qiao Jin. Qiao Jin nodded. Muzilian and Zhong Yu were sitting not far away, holding popcorn in their hands. Qiao Jin walked over and asked them, are you watching a movie? What movie are you watching? Muzilian said expressionlessly, a horror movie. In Shutin was very happy. Yes, a horror movie. It's so exciting. Her brother Zhong Yu looked helpless. Qiao Jin didn't care what they watched until Muzilian pointed at a children's movie next to them. Can't we watch this? Do we have to watch a horror movie? Qiao Jin said, a horror movie has the atmosphere. It's great. Muzilian, are you a pervert? As soon as Qiao Jin said this, Song Yanqing called him. His voice was gentle. Where are you? I have time today. I'm taking a day off. It seemed that he wanted to ask Xiao Jin out. Xiao Jin was very direct. Just in time. We're watching a movie outside. Why don't you come over now? Qi Lian is here too. Muzilian felt that something was wrong. Brother Yanqing is coming. Xiao Jin nodded. Muzilian's expression twisted. You're taking Brother Yanqing to watch a horror movie. He almost instantly thought of the scene where Xiao Jin jumped into Song Yanqing's arms in fear. Of course, he didn't know that the person who jumped into Song Yanqing's arms was him. Chapter 800. Knowing that Song Yanqing was coming, they changed the time of the movie. They were waiting for Song Yanqing to come and watch it together. When Song Yanqing arrived, it was no exaggeration to say that the entire mall was in an uproar. He was the center of attention in the crowd. When he appeared on the first floor, everyone who passed by, even those who weren't that sensitive to beauty, would subconsciously take a few glances at him. In the past, Song Yanqing definitely wouldn't appear in such an occasion. Now that the matter was resolved, and he was a spiritualist himself, he wasn't in any danger and wasn't afraid of being posted online. Moreover, this was considered a date with Xiao Jin. It didn't matter if there were a few third wheels. When Song Yanqing arrived, Xiao Jin received him first. When the surrounding people saw the handsome man and beautiful woman, they really held their breaths. This was normal. Who wouldn't take a few more glances at such a good-looking couple in real life? Song Yanqing went forward and held Xiao Jin's wrist. His actions were so natural that no one could tell that there was anything wrong. They were a very sweet couple. Muzilian hugged the popcorn and glanced at them, then at Enchanting and Zhong Yu. He vaguely felt that the atmosphere wasn't right. Zhong Yu and Enchanting were siblings. But when Zhong Yu hugged the popcorn and Enchanting took it, it was easy for others to misunderstand. And then he was the extra one. When Enchanting saw Song Yanqing, she was a little breathless. He's so good-looking. Is he Xiao Jin's boyfriend? Zhong Yu nodded. I think so. The last time they were in that world, they were together. Song Yanqing walked over and saw Muzilian and Zhong Yu. He smiled and nodded to greet them. Hello. Zhong Yu nodded. Muzilian also licked his lips and smiled. Brother Yanqing, you still have time to watch a movie with us when you're so busy. Song Yanqing, yes, I need to rest after work. Enchanting also looked at Song Yanqing curiously. Song Yanqing nodded at her. Hello. Zhong Yu immediately said, this is my sister, Shu Tian. This is Xiao Jin's boyfriend. His surname is Song. You can call him Mr. Song. Although Enchanting didn't know Song Yanqing's name, she was still a little dazed when she saw Song Yanqing smile. When such a good-looking person smiled, it was really irresistible, even if Enchanting liked Mu Qilian in her heart. It was really beautiful. Enchanting let out a sigh that came from her soul. Then, she realized that Xiao Jin and this Song Yanqing were really compatible. At first, she was still wondering what kind of person would be worthy of Xiao Jin. Now, it seemed that the creator of this world was indeed biased. When Song Yanqing arrived, the movie was about to start. There were many people who were secretly watching them and whispering. They thought that the five of them were too good-looking. Especially the two of them who were holding hands. Just looking at them made people envious. They lined up. Song Yanqing even went to buy a bucket of popcorn for Xiao Jin. He didn't like to eat these things, but he felt it when watching the movie. It was normal for couples to buy these things. After entering, Zhong Yu and Enchanting sat at the side. Muzilian sat in the middle. Song Yanqing sat beside him. Xiao Jin was beside him. There was no one beside her. After all, there weren't many people watching horror movies in the daytime. A group of people came in one after another. After the movie started, Muzilian's expression became serious. He even said to Zhong Yu and the others, "If you're afraid, you can come closer to me." Chapter 801. Enchanting was stunned for a moment. She thought to herself, "I can do this. Can I pretend to be afraid of approaching him? But that's a little unrealistic." She was already very excited when she came. If she pretended to be afraid, wouldn't it be too deliberate? Would Muzilian think that she was a pretentious girl? Enchanting was still a little troubled. After all, he was the person she liked. How should she act? It was very difficult for her. When the movie started, Song Yanqing knew that Xiao Jin would definitely not be afraid. They had even seen such a scary thing in reality. Why would they care about this kind of horror movie? However, Muzilian, who had originally made a solemn vow, started to change his expression. Although he had also experienced a scary world, he had not directly faced the cruel scenes throughout the whole process. He had also not seen the legendary ghost student. He had even slept soundly when the other party knocked on the door, humiliating the other party. The atmosphere and soundtrack of this horror movie were just right to make people feel frightened. When the first scary scene appeared, Muzilian had already subconsciously closed half of his eyes and held the popcorn in front of him. But this kind of performance was too embarrassing. He looked at the side. Enchanting was enjoying it with relish. Zhong Yu and Xiao Jin were expressionless. It was as if they were watching a mime show. Even the gentle and elegant brother Yanqing had a faint smile on his face as he watched the horror movie. Wasn't this a little too perverted? It was another climax. When the scary face suddenly appeared on the screen, Muzilian subconsciously trembled and the popcorn almost spilled out. But this was still good. When another scary scene appeared, Muzilian suddenly heard a faint voice in his ear. "Are you afraid?" Accompanied by the scary scene, Muzilian suddenly screamed and subconsciously threw himself into Song Yanqing's arms. Because it was so sudden and unexpected, Song Yanqing did not react. He looked stiffly at Muzilian, who threw himself into his arms. "Oh, it's so scary, so scary." Everyone else in the theater, Xiao Jin, she silently picked up a piece of popcorn and stuffed it into her mouth. Muzilian had been afraid of ghosts and the dark since he was young. When he was young, he didn't dare to sleep after watching horror movies and had to hide in his brother's room. Now that she had grown up, she wouldn't do such a shameful thing, but she was afraid that she couldn't change it. When they were in the horror world, it was because there were acquaintances around and there were no scary scenes, so they were able to withstand it. This kind of horror scene was made too realistic by the fucking director. Muzilian couldn't help but shudder from his soul. Song Yanqing resisted the urge to push Muzilian away. He could only slowly push him away. "Don't be afraid. This is fake." Muzilian refused to let go of him. Enchanting, who was beside him, suddenly turned his body and patted him on the shoulder. "Don't be afraid, I'm here." "Muzilian, you're scarier than a ghost." He seemed to have realized that something was wrong. The originally terrifying scene did not seem so thrilling anymore. The others in the theater snickered. Everyone was successfully amused by Muzilian's behavior. Those who didn't know better would think that they were watching a funny movie. Muzilian, he had said not to watch horror movies, but these people insisted on watching. His reputation was swept to the ground. Muzilian closed his eyes with tears in his eyes. He didn't want to watch anymore. Chapter 802. When they came out, before the end of the movie, Muzilian pushed them away. Because they felt embarrassed, they didn't dare to eat in the mall for fear of being recognized. So, they changed places to eat. Zhong Yu couldn't help but laugh at him. Didn't you say that you weren't afraid? Why did you want us to get close to you when we were afraid? Muzilian's face turned red from head to toe. He didn't dare to refute. Enchanting said, "It's normal to be afraid. When I was 5 years old, I was also afraid of horror movies." Muzilian, he suspected that Enchanting was implying him and had evidence. He wasn't comforted. Instead, he felt even more embarrassed. Xiao Jin smiled faintly and was more direct. Embarrassing. Muzilian was embarrassed. "I'm not like you bunch of perverts. Watching horror movies was like watching a normal TV show. There were still people who could laugh. How could they not be perverts?" Song Yanqing also felt that it was a little funny. He took them to eat together. Of course, the place he picked was not an ordinary place. When Zhong Yu and Enchanting entered, Enchanting was a little shocked. Zhong Yu was speculating about Song Yanqing's identity. But looking at Xiao Jin and Muzilian's identities, they knew that they weren't ordinary people. After all, some differences could be felt in all aspects. But they wouldn't ask too much. After eating, Xiao Jin and Song Yanqing separated from the other three and went to play by themselves. Some things couldn't be said in front of people who didn't know. Song Yanqing asked Xiao Jin after they left, "It seems that Qi Lian and that guy called Zhong Yu are accepting it very well. After coming out of that world, there weren't any changes. He did investigate some people who came out of the world of rules. Most of them had mental abnormalities. After all, it was a real world and they saw such cruel scenes. It was normal for them to have mental abnormalities." Xiao Jin said, "Fortune favors fools." This sentence was suitable for Muzilian. Zhong Yu was obviously calm and steady. Even if it was a little unbelievable, at least it happened. Zhong Yu accepted it very quickly. Moreover, the matter at the Mountain of Laws could be treated as an illusion, and there would not be any worries in the future. Song Yanqing looked down at her, smiled and changed the topic. "You're now my official girlfriend, so it's time for you to meet my parents, mainly my second uncle. He's preparing to come back from abroad and will probably stay for a few days." Since he already knew that second uncle was faking his illness, there was no point in continuing to pretend. He could finally come back and meet this nephew of his. When Xiao Jin thought of his second uncle, there was a strange look in his eyes. She still had her family's WeChat group, which only consisted of her, Song Yanqing's sister, and her second uncle. However, Song Suyu was usually busy, and second uncle didn't send messages in the group, so Xiao Jin rarely chatted with them. However, she also knew that this second uncle of hers was completely unreliable. She smiled faintly and said, "Sure." Song Yanqing had already met her parents, and she had also been to the Song family's house. It didn't matter if she went again. Song Yanqing nodded. "He'll be back the day after tomorrow. I'll come and pick you up then." Xiao Jin, "Okay." Song Yanqing, there's still time. Let's go shopping elsewhere." Xiao Jin agreed. Although they said they were going shopping, they were really going shopping. The two of them had nothing to do, so they went boating. Chapter 803. Xiao Jin and Song Yanqing only returned to their respective homes at night. When they got home, Muzilian was already home. Xiao Fei wasn't surprised to see Xiao Jin. "Did you go on a date with Lord Song?" Xiao Jin glanced at Muzilian. No wonder Xiao Fei didn't call him when he came home tonight. Muzilian saw Xiao Jin's gaze and straightened his neck. "Why? Can't you see that we're dating?" Xiao Jin ignored him and nodded. "Yes, Song Yanqing's second uncle is coming home too. I'm going to his house for dinner the day after tomorrow." Mu Xiangshan sat at the dining table and raised his eyebrows. Oh, you're going to meet his parents officially. That's fast. Then, he looked at Muzillion. You should learn from him. He just picks the best girl and gets engaged. Look at the girls you're dating. None of them are stopping. You didn't bring any of them back. Muzillion was silent for a moment and said, I don't plan to marry her. Why would I bring her back? Qiao Fei immediately said, listen to yourself. Is that what you're saying? Mu Xiangshan said, I heard that you haven't had a girlfriend recently. Did you change your personality or did you get hurt and can't afford to love her anymore? Muzillion looked up and revealed an expression as if he had seen through the vicissitudes of life. Sigh, I just suddenly feel that after being in love so many times, it's time to stop. I plan to find a woman who understands me. Qiao Fei understands that you're a playboy. Mu Qilian, look at you, what you're saying is simply inhumane. I did fall in love a little too quickly, but I've never let those girls down. Mom, you can't say this. I always wait until we break up before I find the next one. Your son is too handsome, so what can I do if there are always girls chasing after me? You'll get tired of being in a relationship all the time. I plan to find another one after I've thought it through. It was mainly due to the recent events at the Mountain of Laws that had caused him to be somewhat absent-minded. Moreover, Qiao Jin had also cleansed his worldview, causing him to temporarily feel absent-minded. She suddenly felt that ordinary women were not worthy of him. Qiao Fei was a little suspicious. Why do I feel like you changed after going to the army? Did something happen that we don't know about? Mu Xiangshan gossiped, don't tell me you like men. Muzillion, he immediately looked at Mu Xiangshan with a horrified expression. Qiao Fei screamed, Dad, what are you talking about? Mu Xiangshan, I didn't say it. You said it. Seeing that they were talking again, Qiao Jin smiled and said, you guys keep talking. I'm going up. Hey, why do you go to the room all day? Aren't you going to the Song family the day after tomorrow? Mom has to tell you something. She pulled Qiao Jin to sit down and said, this time you're going to the Song family officially. Lord Song brought us gifts last time. You can't go to the Song family empty-handed. Mom will arrange some gifts for you. You can bring them to the Song family. Qiao Jin listened obediently. Okay. Qiao Fei rolled her eyes. Go and ask Lord Song what his parents like. Muzillion attacked her. Mom, have you ever considered that we may not be able to get what they like? Qiao Fei, shut up. Do you think everyone is as unrestrained as you? As long as Qiao Jin has the heart, it's fine. Qiao Jin thought for a moment and said, okay, then you arrange it. Qiao Fei looked at the well-behaved Qiao Jin at the moment and said with some emotion, I was thinking about your elder brother. I didn't expect you to be the fastest. You're only 20. I really can't bear to. As soon as she spoke, she began to be sentimental. Qiao Jin, what was she thinking? Chapter 804. As a mother, she couldn't control her imagination. Qiao Fei had already started thinking about Qiao Jin's life after she got married. She had completely forgotten that Qiao Jin had said that she wouldn't get married. She was only 20 years old and her relationship with Song Yanqing was only on the surface. How could Qiao Fei know? She happily went to prepare a gift for Qiao Jin. Qiao Jin received a message from Mo Jiang. Mo Jiang had officially joined the spirit group. No matter why the spirit group was willing to let her join, they had to at least guard against her. Now that she had joined the spirit group, it was a lot more reassuring. Of course, they also asked how Mo Jiang got out. However, Mo Jiang said that she couldn't remember a lot of things and that she was in the city when she woke up. The spirit group suspected that Xiao Jin was the one who did it, but they had no evidence. The next day, she went to school to get her exam results. Unfortunately, Big Boss Xiao had been busy with her own matters during this period of time and had slacked off on her studies, so she just passed. However, that was the basic class. Her results for her professional class were still very high. She even got first place for her professional class this time. Language was simply too easy to learn. At least, that was the case for Xiao Jin. In the afternoon, she took the time to go back to the dormitory and met Tong Yingxin, who was about to go out. Tong Yingxin didn't want to talk to Xiao Jin now, especially when she heard from the people in the dormitory next door that Xiao Jin got first place for her professional class. She was angry. This person was clearly not in the dormitory and took leave. How could she get first place? She must have cheated. However, she didn't dare to fart without evidence. Xiao Jin saw Tong Yingxin's expression and didn't mind at all. She walked into the dormitory and saw Xue Jingyi packing his things. It was still a suitcase. Xiao Jin saw it and asked, "You're moving to the dormitory?" Xue Jingyi turned around and saw that it was her. He shook his head and said, "I'm going overseas to participate in a math competition. I'll be back in a week. My flight is this afternoon." Xiao Jin didn't really understand the world of a top student. He only felt that Xue Jingyi was really very capable, so he nodded. "Okay, good luck." Xue Jingyi nodded, adjusted his glasses, and smiled shyly. Xiao Jin saw a trace of gray qi floating around her body. It seemed like there was some trouble, but it wasn't anything major. Xiao Jin said, "Be careful when you're overseas. Follow the school and don't wander around alone." Xue Jingyi turned around and looked at her curiously. She didn't know why her roommate would suddenly say such a thing. After all, Xiao Jin's personality was usually quite indifferent. She rarely spoke up to remind him of anything. Xue Jingyi accepted Xiao Jin's reminder out of goodwill. "Okay, I know." The environment overseas was indeed unfamiliar, but it wasn't Xue Jingyi's first time there. She wasn't nervous at all. Xiao Jin nodded and went back to the dormitory to get some things. She didn't have classes in the afternoon. She received news that Mo Jiang was filming near the capital and asked her to visit him. Visiting wasn't the main point. The main point was that Mo Jiang said that there was a magical psychic in the crew. This psychic could be easily dealt with by Mo Jiang, but to Xiao Jin, it was a walking spirit. She didn't hesitate to agree to Mo Jiang's request. She even asked Mo Jiang to find an excuse for her to go in. Chapter 805. Mo Jiang was currently in a drama called Fengqing Banquet. It was an ancient drama about a few people with different fates at a banquet. Mo Jiang was playing the role of a peerless second female lead. She was a complete flower vase character. When Xiao Jin arrived, he saw Mo Jiang wearing a red dress. She was like a peerless demon that could steal people's souls. She was sitting on a recliner lazily reading her lines. She was whispering something to her. Probably because Mo Jiang was lying down and she was half squatting, she looked a little humble. When Mo Jiang saw Xiao Jin, she immediately waved at Xiao Jin. When the crew saw Xiao Jin appear, they were shocked. They had seen demonesses like Mo Jiang before, but this was the first time they had seen a celestial fairy like Xiao Jin. Just her aura was unforgettable. When the director, who was cursing at the side, saw Xiao Jin appear, he was stunned. When Xiao Jin walked towards Mo Jiang sat up from her recliner. When she saw Xiao Jin, she shouted, "Xiao Jin." Xiao Jin nodded. She looked over. When he saw Xiao Jin, he was slightly surprised and shocked. However, he quickly calmed down and nodded at Xiao Jin in a friendly manner. Hello. Since it was Mo Jiang who greeted him, he must be a friend of Mo Jiang's. As expected, a great beauty's friend was also a great beauty. Xiao Jin was currently staring at the demonized spiritual reader. However, she didn't sense any demonized spiritual reader here. Mo Jiang directly said, "They're not here yet. They're taking turns." Wait a moment. It answered her question. Xiao Jin smiled faintly and nodded. Xia Shi looked a little curious. Mo Jiang, is this your friend? Mo Jiang's expression was surprisingly calm. You don't need to know. Xia Shi was rendered speechless by her words. Xia Shi seemed a little aggrieved, but he couldn't say anything to Mo Jiang. He just looked at Mo Jiang as if he had been wronged. Xiao Jin glanced at Xia Shi but didn't say anything. Mo Jiang brought Xiao Jin to the side for a chat. Xiao Jin then calmly said, "If you don't like him, why do you still want to be a couple with him?" Right now, the news was all over the place. A newly debuted peerless beauty and a fresh and handsome idol. This combination was a little unexpected, but it was also surprisingly delicious. I don't know either. Mo Jiang pursed her lips and looked into the distance. She was a little confused. How should I put it? When I see him, I always have a very contradictory feeling. I hate him, but I also want to forgive him. Because of this contradictory feeling, Mo Jiang had always been indifferent to Xia Shi. However, she didn't reject Xia Shi's approach. Xiao Jin knew that this probably had something to do with Mo Jiang's memories. She chuckled. If you really don't like him, you don't have to force yourself. Even if you don't want to be a couple with him, you can still become popular. That's not the case. Mo Jiang touched her face and suddenly looked at Xiao Jin. Her expression was a little serious. Since he likes me, why should I reject him? I'm so beautiful. I have a few spare tires. You can understand, right? Xiao Jin, not only did Mo Jiang quickly integrate into modern society, she also learned some of the immoral essence of this society. Xiao Jin still smiled. If you want to, then do as you wish. Chapter 806. Mo Jiang nodded. Thank you for supporting me. Xiao Jin, I don't want to care about you, not support. Mo Jiang, same meaning. Xiao Jin, as they spoke, Xiao Jin sensed something. Mo Jiang also narrowed his eyes. She's here. She rubbed her chin and looked at the person walking over with a playful smile. This little girl is quite interesting. Because the person who came was an ordinary-looking girl. The girl's face could only be considered ordinary. The only eye-catching thing about her was that she was very fat. She wasn't very fat, about 160 pounds. But as a staff member of the film crew, her fat was indeed very eye-catching. The expression on her face was also timid. When she walked over, her back was hunched and her head was lowered. Her bad posture also showed her timidity and inferiority. Mo Jiang said again, she's even thinner than when I saw her yesterday. Xiao Jin glanced at her. Mo Jiang said, when I first saw her, she was about 200 pounds. But now she's lost so much weight. They all say that she's working hard to lose weight. The expression on her face was thought-provoking. Xiao Jin naturally understood what it meant. That girl couldn't be said to be demonized, but her obsession was too deep and she was possessed. Just like some things needed to be exchanged for other things. Her thinness had been exchanged in an immoral way. She was still so heavy now. In the future, she would only get thinner and thinner. Xiao Jin said, she will eventually become so thin that she won't be recognizable. Mo Jiang, who doesn't know? But once she was possessed, there was no saving her. Feng Shualan, come, this is for you. A staff member passed by and handed a large box to the chubby girl. The box was a little heavy. Xiao Jin and Nemo Jiang clearly saw that when the box was in her hands, she swayed and almost fell. She barely managed to catch it. The staff member said very naturally, "It's a little heavy. Hurry up and move it to the prop room." Feng Shualan said with some difficulty, "Okay." Then, step by step, his footsteps were somewhat unsteady as he walked towards the prop room. She had to pass by Xiao Jin and Nemo Jiang. The moment Feng Shualan saw them, her eyes flashed with surprise. Then, she quickly lowered her head, not wanting Nemo Jiang and Xiao Jin to see her. This was the normal state of a person with extreme inferiority when faced with someone who was too perfect. It was just like how ordinary people would take a few more glances at good-looking people on the street. There was also a group of people who felt that such people were too good-looking and did not dare to look at or talk to them. Xiao Jin glanced at him and said, "I haven't killed anyone." But it was not far away. After all, he was demonized. He knew what price he had to pay, but he couldn't stop. Mo Jiang sighed. The director called for Mo Jiang from the other side. Mo Jiang rolled her eyes, not caring about her image at all. Then, she walked over. Xiao Jin stood there and did not know what they were talking about. Mo Jiang and the director looked over at Xiao Jin at the same time. Then Mo Jiang shook his head. The director looked regretful. Feng Shualan did not come out of the prop room for a long time. Xiao Jin waited for a while. Then Mo Jiang came over. "Our director asked if you were interested in acting in a role." Xiao Jin, not interested. Mo Jiang, he paid. Xiao Jin looked over. Mo Jiang said, "I know you're not the kind of person to betray your character for money." Xiao Jin, "Indeed, I agreed with 10 million. Mo Jiang. Chapter 807. The male and female lead of this drama didn't even earn 10 million. Xiao Jin's appetite had been spoiled by the spirit group. After a while, she saw Feng Shualan walk out with something in her hand. It looked like a lunchbox and she passed it to one of the supporting actresses. The actress didn't mind at all. Instead, she took the lunchbox with relish and started eating. Others might not be able to see it, but Xiao Jin could clearly see that while the female star was eating, wisps of pure white smoke from her body were being transferred to Feng Shualan through the air. Feng Shualan's body seemed to have lost some weight. She might have lost half a kilogram. But for her current base, it was too inconspicuous. Almost no one would notice such a strange change. The actress didn't seem to have changed much, but her face was shrouded in a layer of gray smoke. Demonized psychic sorcerers were either tempted, driven by hatred, or their obsession was too deep. There were differences between the two, but they had one thing in common. They both wanted to kill people. Feng Shualan's ability was to absorb other people's energy and transform herself. It made her lose weight. But this method was addictive. It was like taking drugs. Others would suffer physical damage. If Feng Shualan caught someone and sucked it, that person would die and Feng Shualan would lose weight faster. Demonized spiritualists were no different from normal spiritualists at the beginning. The only difference was the damage they caused to people. One had a clear line in their heart, while the other simply wanted people to die. Since Feng Shualan was demonized, she could endure it now, but it didn't mean she could in the future. Xiao Jin paused for a moment and called He Yao to tell her that there was a demonized spiritualist here. Naturally, He Yao quickly came and took Feng Shualan away. Xiao Jin took her demonized spirit seed on the way. Since she found out early, there was no reason for her to wait until Feng Shuolan became a disaster. She hadn't killed anyone before. If Qiao Jin took her spirit seed, she might have a chance to become a normal person. The spirit group was more cautious about demonized spiritualists now. But this time, the situation was different. He Yao locked her up after taking her back. When Mo Jiang returned from filming a scene, he found that Feng Shuolan was gone. He was a little surprised. You acted so quickly. Did you destroy the evidence? Qiao Jin laughed. Someone else took him away. Meng Qingyu's spirit group specializes in dealing with such matters. Mo Jiang nodded. When he saw that Qiao Jin was about to leave, he suddenly said to her, "When I was in the coffin, you took away my array point, right?" Although Qiao Jin had taken away her array point, she still had her own abilities. After all, after her death, the array points were something extra. Qiao Jin nodded. Mo Jiang frowned and pressed his chest. I feel like there's still a formation point in me that I haven't discovered yet. She was a formation master after all, so her perception was much stronger. The formation point in her heart had been discovered. But she didn't know what it was, and it was impossible for her to remove it from her heart. Even Qiao Jin didn't know what the formation point was. It was as if the formation point was completely wrapped in their hearts. Other than when there were abnormal movements, it was very calm most of the time. Naturally, people outside couldn't sense it. It might be useful. Qiao Jin didn't explain too much. You won't die. Don't worry. Mo Jiang was speechless. Who was worried about this? Chapter 808. When Qiao Jin returned home, he heard another shocking piece of gossip. Something big had happened at the Ji family. Ji Sikai had investigated and found out that his car accident was not an accident. Shang Yiran had colluded with an outsider. That outsider was called Mo Huan. It didn't matter how they found out, but it was related to Ho Wan. The most important thing was that Shang Yiran had been exposed. Mo Huan had disappeared, and Ho Wan was the scapegoat. Because that person was one of Ho Wan's boyfriends. Even Mu Xiangshan couldn't help but look askance at the development of this matter. The Ji family was in big trouble now, and Ji Huai almost had a heart attack because of Ji Sikai. Old Master Ji was personally handling this matter, and Ji Sikai was likely to use this matter to squeeze his father out of the Ji group's power center. Mu Xiangshan was probably too gossipy. At home, he excitedly explained the whole story to Qiao Jin, the only person who didn't know. Have you seen a father who oppresses his own son? Ji Sikai's father is one. Mu Xiangshan sighed. The Ji Corporation's Jiangshan. Back then, your grandfather merged his own company into the Ji Corporation, causing the Ji Corporation to become powerful. The family in power is the first branch of the Ji family. Your grandfather doesn't care about anything and just waits for money. Ji Qiue and Chai Yueli are also useless. They don't have any say in the company. Ji Sikai's family and the second branch of the Ji family are fighting fiercely. Ji Sikai has been talented since young. Since his grandfather is in charge of the company, he must be thinking of ways to nurture his own grandson. Ji Huai is a muddle-headed person. He likes the younger one outside and doesn't care about his own son. Ji Sikai has been under his grandfather's care for many years. It's just that Ji Huai has been suppressing him and the second branch. Ji Huai is capable, but he's a little blind. Ji Sikai's grandfather saw that Ji Sikai was his son, so he didn't interfere in the conflict between father and son. Instead, he nurtured Ji Sikai. But this matter is different. Ji Huai's youngest son dared to touch Ji Sikai. That's the same as courting death. Now that Ji Huai is in a predicament, Ji Sikai can use this matter to take away his father's authority. Qiao Jin, after hearing the whole story, she sighed and said, Xiang Shan really knows everything. Mu Xiangshan's face sank. What Xiangshan, old man? Qiao Jin, oh. Mu Xiangshan. Qiao Fei, who was listening to the gossip at the side, was also a little puzzled. It's fine if he likes the outside world, but why would he collude with the second branch to fight against his own son? Aren't you siding with outsiders? You don't even want your own money. The Ji family's old master and the second branch's old master were biological brothers, but they both had their own families. Even biological brothers kept clear accounts. How could Ji Huai be so stupid? Mu Xiangshan snorted, didn't you hear the rumors outside? Ji Sikai has disliked Ji Huai since he was young because of his mother. Ji Huai also wants to add the two illegitimate sons into the Ji family's genealogy. It's just that Ji Sikai has always been in the way. It's impossible for him to be happy. His son, who always goes against him, probably isn't on the same side. It's just like how Zhenming is biased towards outsiders. Can you tolerate it when he doesn't care about your three biological sons? Qiao Fei, don't talk nonsense. Zhenming doesn't have them. Mu Xiangshan, let me give you an example. Look at how agitated you are. Chapter 809. Qiao Fei snorted and asked, should we go over and take a look? Mu Xiangshan waved his hand unhappily. You're just a short-sighted person. They're in such a big mess now. Who wouldn't know that you're just there to watch the show? He paused and said, let's wait until they're done. Even if they couldn't see the show, they had to see how it ended. Qiao Jin and Qiao Fei, not long after, Mu Xiangshan received another call. After hanging up, he slapped his thigh. Oh my, Ji Qiue and the others are coming back. Big brother Ji is so angry this time. He even said that he's going to announce his will. The distribution of old Master Ji's assets was also a mystery. After all, he was still alive and the two branches were fighting so fiercely. No one knew if he was helping Ji Huai or Ji Sikai. Needless to say, Ji Sikai would get the biggest share this time. When the time came, the Ji family would change. Ji Qiue and Chai Yueli received the news and were rushing back. Qiao Fei was confused. What does this have to do with them? This is the first branch's business. What does it have to do with the third branch? When the will comes out, the shares will definitely be redistributed. Doesn't Ji Pingon have to arrange his own affairs? I think Qiao Jin will have to go too. I heard that Pingon seems to have left her some shares. Sigh, how nice. She doesn't have to do anything and gets money for free. He looked at Qiao Jin as he spoke. Qiao Fei looked at Qiao Jin worriedly. The internal struggles of the rich are too complicated. If Jin really gets old Master Ji's shares, won't many people come looking for her? And her mother. Ji Sikai got into a car accident. Won't Mei Jin? Qiao Fei had watched too many dramas involving the rich and powerful. She couldn't help but make wild guesses. Qiao Jin laughed. Fei, you're thinking too much. How many shares can I get? No one will care about me. Even if someone cared, they did not have the ability to do so. Qiao Fei sobbed, Jin, you don't understand. You don't understand how scary the rich are these days. Look, even Ji Sikai got into trouble. Mu Xiangshan couldn't take it anymore. What happened to Ji Sikai was an accident. Why are you worried about Qiao Jin? Why don't you worry about other people? Qiao Fei, who else would I be worried about other than Jin? She was worried about those who wanted to harm Qiao Jin. Mu Xiangshan clicked his tongue and went fishing. He couldn't explain it clearly to women. Qiao Jin told Qiao Fei not to worry. Now the Ji family was still in trouble. She had to go to the Song family tomorrow. Now, he had become a busy person. The next day, she went to school and returned home in the afternoon, waiting for Song Yanqing to send someone to pick her up. After a while, even Mu Xiangshan received the news that the second uncle of the Song family had come back. Song Yanqing called Qiao Jin after receiving the second uncle. "I've picked up second uncle. I'm coming to pick you up. Are you at home now?" Qiao Jin said, Qiao Fei was still checking whether the things she had prepared were suitable. She was a little nervous. Mu Qilian was also at the side at this moment. Hearing this, she complained, "Look at how anxious you are. Qiao Jin is just going to the Song family as a guest. What, are you going to marry your daughter off?" As soon as he finished speaking, he was slapped. "Shut up if you don't know how to talk." Muzilian covered the back of his head and said angrily, "In this family, you bully the weak and fear the strong. You whine to others, but always used violence to me." Chapter 8:10. Qiao Fei glared at him and ignored him. Muzilian looked at Qiao Jin. After looking him up and down, he suddenly said, "Behave well. Don't disgrace the Mu family." After saying this, he slipped away before Qiao Fei slapped him for the second time. Qiao Fei shouted at him from behind, "Where are you going, you son of a bitch?" Qiao Jin said, "He's going to the disco." Recently, Muzilian was expelled for not joining the army. At first, he was friendly, but recently, he began to degenerate again. He danced with his bad friends every day. If he wanted to continue his studies, he would have to wait until next semester. Therefore, he was idle this semester. When he studied, he would play games or go to the disco. His life was very fulfilling. Qiao Fei was speechless. "Don't learn from him, Jin. You are a good boy." At that time, when Muzilian was not there, Qiao Jin always found an excuse to go to the disco. Qiao Fei was very angry. Qiao Jin nodded and chuckled. After a while, Song Yanqing arrived. He came to the Mu family to pick up Qiao Jin. When he saw Qiao Fei, he said, "Auntie Qiao, I'm here to pick up Qiao Jin. Come on, come on." Qiao Fei was very happy. Anyway, Song Yanqing was so good-looking. Qiao Fei was happy as long as he saw him. Song Yanqing also smiled gently. He nodded at Qiao Jin and naturally took Qiao Jin away. He saw that Qiao Jin was still carrying something in his hand. He took it over. Auntie Qiao prepared a gift. They had even prepared an exquisite packaging, and it looked like it was worth a lot. She was so thoughtful. Qiao Jin nodded. She said that I should prepare a gift for the first visit. Last time was different. It was just an ordinary friend who went over as a guest. This time, she was his girlfriend. It was rare for the Song family to gather together. Song Yanqing nodded. "It's good that you and Auntie Qiao have such intentions. You've seen our family before. They're all very kind." His kindness was genuine, but it was also directed at Qiao Jin. When they took Qiao Jin to the car, Qiao Jin asked, "Has second uncle gone back?" Song Yanqing nodded. "He should be home by now." Speaking of this, he couldn't help but laugh. Second uncle has changed a lot. Perhaps because he realized that his purpose had been exposed, second uncle had completely given up on himself. He no longer came back like before and even put on a meticulous disguise. He had completely exposed his true colors. This time, even Song Yanqing, who had seen a lot of things, was shocked. He had thought that second uncle, who had revealed his true colors, might be different from what he had imagined, but he hadn't expected him to be so different. However, Xiao Jin had never seen him before, so he couldn't imagine it. Thus, he followed Song Yanqing to the Song family. When they arrived at the Song family's courtyard, Song Suyu stood at the entrance of the hall and waited. When he saw Xiao Jin and Song Yanqing get out of the car together, he smiled. "You're here." It was obvious that he genuinely liked Xiao Jin. Xiao Jin nodded and called out, "Suyu." The Song family members were all happy and didn't care about how Xiao Jin addressed them. When she saw Xiao Jin take out the gifts he had prepared for the Song family, she smiled even more happily. "You're already here. Why are you still giving us gifts? It's not your first time here." Xiao Jin said gently, "Etiquette is always necessary." Song Yanqing asked, "Where's mom and dad?" Song Siyu said, "They're chatting with second uncle inside. They're waiting for you. The food is ready. They're just waiting for you to serve it." Chapter 8:11. When Song Yanqing brought Xiao Jin in, she was indeed shocked when she saw second uncle. All these wealthy people that Xiao Jin had met for such a long time were at least well-dressed and courteous. It wasn't that second uncle wasn't polite. It was that he was too wild. He had the appearance of a wandering artist. His hair reached his shoulders, and it was curly. She didn't know if it was naturally curly or permed. He hadn't shaved and was wearing a leather jacket and pants. His face was exceptionally good-looking, and she could vaguely see that he resembled his older brother, Song Yanqing. He was in his 40s and had never been married. His older brother looked younger. He had a particularly weathered and unruly aura. When they saw Xiao Jin, Song Shirin and Qin Yuan smiled warmly. "Xiao Jin, come and sit down." Song Yanqing's second uncle, Song Simeon, also sat there and looked at Xiao Jin curiously. Yes, it was just as Suyu had said. She had an ethereal air about her. She looked different. She was a perfect match for his nephew. He always felt that his nephew was too high up in the sky. He hadn't expected there to be someone even more ethereal. Indeed, they liked the same type of people. Song Yanqing introduced her in a deep voice. "Xiao Jin, this is my second uncle." Xiao Jin looked at Song Simeon and smiled. "Hello." She didn't greet him, but her tone was quite polite. Song Simeon didn't feel that anything was wrong. He even reached out his hand to Xiao Jin. "Hello. I'm curious. When you and Yanqing were together, who confessed first?" Xiao Jin was speechless. "It was me." Song Yanqing said thoughtfully, directly admitting it. He pulled Xiao Jin's hand and asked her to sit down. He said softly, "Second uncle, it's the first time you're meeting her. Don't be too direct. You'll scare her. She can't take it." Song Simeon was speechless. Everyone else, why did they feel that there was something wrong with these words? Xiao Jin also laughed, but didn't say anything. He just nodded again. "Let's not talk about this for now. Let's eat first to welcome His Majesty." Qin Yuan was extremely happy today. Ever since Xiao Jin came in, she had not stopped smiling. The last time they met, it wasn't like that. She didn't expect her son to bring someone back this time. Now, the stone in her heart had been lifted. If they got together, there was a possibility of marriage. If they got married, there was a possibility of having grandchildren. Then, Qin Yuan thought of Xiao Jin. He was only 20 years old and in his third year of university. He could not help but feel as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over him. Sigh, at least another 1.5 years. At that time, Guanqing was already 27 years old. Forget it, forget it. They were still young. As a mother, she could accept getting married before the age of 30. When the dishes were served, Song Qianyin asked, "Did you see He Ning when you were abroad?" He was asking Song Yanqing. Song Henning was Song Yanqing's aunt. "I saw her." Song Qianyin was clearly surprised to hear this question. The smile on her face gradually faded. She said, "She's fine. Her husband doesn't seem to be in a good state." Song Yanqing and Qiao Jin didn't say anything. It was good that he wasn't in a good state. At least it meant that nothing else had happened. Song Qianyin hesitated for a moment before asking, "They're living an ordinary life abroad. Even if the Feng family collapsed, they wouldn't be like this, right?" "Brother, what's going on?" Song Qianyin shook her head. "It's hard to say. I said I wanted to help He Ning and her husband, but she refused." Chapter 8:12. Song Henning accepted his daughter's suggestion and Song Yanqing's words. Now, the Feng family's debt needed to be paid by themselves. It was the best that they didn't get into trouble. Song Henning didn't ask for too much. If they could get back on their feet, it would mean that this was over. Song Simeon didn't understand, but he had heard some things about the Feng family. He clicked his tongue and said, "The Feng family is really strange. I heard that many people in their family got into trouble this time. God's revenge is quite cruel." "That's enough." Qin Yuan glared at him. "Don't talk nonsense. We're not only picking you up today, but we're also entertaining Qiao Jin." Song Simeon, okay. It was obvious that Song Simeon's personality was different from that of the Song family. During the meal, they chatted. Most of it was about Song Simeon's problems abroad. Occasionally, they would ask about Qiao Jin. Qiao Jin answered them all. It was all about trivial matters. There was nothing to talk about. Then, they heard about the Ji family. Song Simeon had more information. He said that Ji Huai was trying to win over the shareholders. He probably wanted the shareholders to support him on the board of directors. Unfortunately, no one dared to support him because of what he had done. Because of this, Ji Huai was likely to be kicked out of the power center. When the time came, Ji Sikai would take over. Young people had different styles. Song Simeon even praised him. Ji Sikai is young, but he's quite capable. It might not be a bad thing for the Ji family to be led by him. No one in the younger generation of the second and third branches can compare to him. Then, he glanced at Song Yanqing and smiled mysteriously. He didn't say anything. Ji Sikai looked ruthless on the surface, but he was also ruthless in business. His son looked gentle, but he was steady in business. When it was time to make a move, he never hesitated. He was satisfied to have such a son. Then, Qin Yuan stepped on Song Simeon. Song Simeon, only then did he remember that Qiao Jin was also the granddaughter of the Ji family's third uncle. It was just that no one had heard of this news before, and Qiao Jin had not returned to the Ji family, so no one remembered it. Song Simeon wasn't in charge of anything, but she was someone who loved to see the world burn. That's it. Wasn't the Ji family obvious? Other than Ji Sikai, who else could take over the Ji family? That dog Ji Huai isn't a good person, but his son is quite promising. Qin Yuan coughed. Your Highness, why are you speaking in front of the child? Song Simeon restrained himself a little. That good-for-nothing Ji Huai is indeed lucky. Everyone, Qiao Jin felt that if this person was placed in front of Mu Xiangshan and Mu Zilian, they would definitely have something in common. After the meal, Song Yanqing took Qiao Jin back to his courtyard. His parents must have something to say to second uncle. The moon was bright tonight. As they walked, Song Yanqing suddenly asked, "Are you going back tonight? Why don't you stay here and rest? I'll come over later to talk to you." Xiao Jin was stunned for a moment before she realized what he meant. She nodded slightly. "Okay, I'll call Fei Fei." Seeing that she agreed, Song Yanqing smiled gently. The moonlight illuminated half of his face. It was as bright as moonlight, cold and noble. Xiao Jin looked at him and felt that he was indeed the most good-looking person in the world. He was so good-looking that she sometimes wanted to look at him more. Chapter 8:13. Xiao Jin thought so, but he didn't know that Song Yanqing also thought so. They came to the yard and didn't rush to go up. Instead, they sat on the deck chairs by the pool. There was a pool here, and the scenery was good. He also had a flower garden, which he would take care of when he was free. When he was idle before, these things were particularly easy to pass the time and not tiring. Xiao Jin looked at the clear water in the pool and suddenly said, "Have you used this water?" Song Yanqing chuckled. "Since that person melted, I haven't used this water. He just used it as a decoration. He was weak and not suitable for swimming before. After he could swim, this kind of thing happened again. Most of the time, Zai would use the pool. But since last time, Zai was scolded by him when he wanted to swim. Although Zai was bold, if he knew that a person had melted in the pool, even if the water had been changed countless times, he would probably be creeped out. At this time, he was tactful. Seeing Miss Chiao and the young master by the pool, he found a secluded place to avoid disturbing the two people. Sigh, it was another day of lamenting that he was a solo player in his mother's womb. The water in the pool swayed slightly. The ripples reflected through the light on Xiao Jin's cheeks, which had a kind of hazy photosynthetic beauty. Song Yanqing suddenly stretched out his fingertips and touched Xiao Jin's cheek. It was soft and tender. Like tofu. Xiao Jin turned his head and just looked at him calmly. He didn't speak or object. Song Yanqing suddenly sighed. His voice was strangely gentle and low in the moonlight. "Xiao Jin, do you know what love is?" "Yes." Song Yanqing was stunned and then smiled. "Then do you know that I like you?" Xiao Jin, he felt that some words could be fooled for a lifetime. Some words had to be said at the right time. "I know." Her voice was very soft, but also very clear. Song Yanqing's smile froze slightly. "You know, but do you understand?" "Although I don't understand." Xiao Jin poked his chin with his finger. "But I also understand that if you don't like it, you wouldn't have asked me to pretend to be your girlfriend." Song Yanqing couldn't help but laugh. "Since you know, why did you still promise me?" "I don't want to change anything with you, so I agreed." His gaze was deep as he stared into her clear eyes. It was hard to imagine that she could still be so calm when saying such words. Sure enough, the person who fell in love first was the one who was deeply in love. He had to admit that. "Song Yanqing, then do you like me?" Xiao Jin was silent for a while. After a while, he said, "I didn't understand love before, and I don't understand it now. I've never had such a thing." However, there were still some changes. She had seen too many things, and her emotions were bound to change. Just like how she gradually fell in love with the Mu family and took them under her wings. This was a kind of protection, but also a manifestation of love. After saying this, she thought again, "But it's always different for you." It was always different for him. Actually, hearing this sentence was already more than enough. He obtained a kind of complete satisfaction in his heart, so satisfied that he let out a sigh. His fingertips moved slightly, and he suddenly turned his cheek. The corner of his lips gently brushed Xiao Jin's cheek. It was just a faint moment, like a dragonfly skimming the water, with a careful test. Song Siu in the distance, under the moonlight, they were a perfect couple. She was lonely and cold. Chapter 8:14. Qiao Jin and Song Yanqing both knew that their sister was here. But Qiao Jin didn't expect Song Yanqing to suddenly turn his head and kiss her. It wasn't exactly a kiss. It was like a dragonfly skimming the surface of the water. There was almost no feeling. It was as if he had only used the corner of his lips to express his respect for her to the greatest extent. Perhaps it was sudden, but it was fine. Qiao Jin was silent for a moment. She saw that Song Yanqing's eyes were dark, but they were shining like stars. Under the moonlight, the two of them were equally quiet. Song Siu felt that he had come at the wrong time and was a little embarrassed. Qiao Jin turned her head and looked at Song Siu. Her eyes were naturally calm, as if she wasn't surprised by Song Yanqing's actions at all. This made Song Siu feel that he was the one who was surprised. Song Yanqing also turned around and looked at Song Siu naturally with a faint smile. "Sister." Her tone was gentle. The two of them weren't embarrassed. What did she mean by being embarrassed? Song Siu composed himself and walked over with a smile, pretending not to see it. "Qiao Jin isn't going back tonight, right?" Qiao Jin nodded. Song Yanqing also said, "She's staying with me tonight. Do you have something to say to her?" "I can avoid it." Song Siu didn't object. Obviously, what she wanted to say wasn't suitable for her brother to hear. Song Yanqing nodded and considerately went into his room first, leaving Qiao Jin and Song Siu to talk. Song Siu sat in the seat that Song Yanqing had just sat in. He looked at Qiao Jin with a sincere and gentle smile on his face. "Qiao Jin, this is the first time we've talked like this." Qiao Jin nodded. "Do you have anything to say to me?" Song Siu looked very similar to Song Yanqing. The difference was that Song Yanqing was a combination of absolute advantages. Of course, Song Siu's appearance was not bad, but in comparison, her eyebrows and the corners of her eyes were always a little duller than Song Yanqing's. When she stood beside Song Yanqing, she was not so outstanding. Human genes were wondrous. No matter what, Song Siu was still a proper young lady from a prestigious family. She had the unique demeanor of a rich young lady. From her temperament to her figure, she was perfect. Moreover, she was the same as Song Yanqing, leaning towards gentleness. She treated people and things with a kind of politeness. "It's not that I have anything to say to you." Song Siu smiled. "You and my brother have started dating. As his sister, of course I sincerely congratulate you. In the past, I even lamented that my younger brother didn't find a girlfriend even though he was 25 years old. Even if my parents didn't say anything, they were also anxious. In the past, it was also because Yan's health wasn't good. We couldn't rush him even if we urged him. Now that there was no need to rush him, he naturally found it. Not only that, even his life was saved by Qiao Jin. They knew that Qiao Jin's existence was a little special. However, as long as their younger brother liked her, there was nothing special about her. She wouldn't harm anyone. That was enough. Qiao Jin was a little curious. He hasn't liked anyone before. It was Song Yanqing's first time in a relationship. However, Qiao Jin himself felt different because he was directly resurrected. It was still a little unbelievable that Song Yanqing hadn't been moved by anyone for 25 years. How can he like someone? If he likes someone, how can we not know? Song Siu laughed heartily. He was protected too well by us in the past. Other than me, he didn't have much contact with girls. How can he be moved by someone? There were many girls from prestigious families who liked him in the capital, but how could it be so easy to get close to Song Yanqing? Chapter 8:15. Not to mention making him fall in love with her. In the beginning, Song Yanqing didn't fall in love with Xiao Jin at first sight. It was just that she gradually understood him during the process of interacting with him, and her feelings slowly changed. Oh. Song Suyu was a little curious. If you're worried about this, I can guarantee you that Yanqing has never liked anyone other than you. We're both girls, so it's easier for us to talk. You can also tell sister that you've never liked anyone before. Of course, Xiao Jin shook his head. Even in the past 20 years, Xiao Jin, who didn't have the memory of an array master, wasn't unmoved. It was just that she was much more straightforward. She only had some appreciation for good-looking boys. She didn't really like anyone. After all, she was much younger. Song Suyu sighed. It's indeed fate that you two can meet each other. Song Suyu wasn't single until now. Her brother was 25, and she was 26. How could there be no one chasing after her? In the family, her parents weren't actually worried about Song Yanqing, but about Song Suyu. Because she was a girl and an older sister. Song Suyu had experienced a few relationships, and they all broke up peacefully. There really wasn't a relationship that was so strong that she wanted to get married. The love in the wealthy families was also mixed with some benefits. Most of the people who had pursued Song Suyu were the sons of the Song family's partners, or the second generation of the tycoons. It wasn't that there wasn't any true love, but it wasn't easy to meet one. There were also many people around her who approached her with ulterior motives. Therefore, Song Suyu was a little emotional about Xiao Jin and her younger brother. She was also a little envious. The two of them didn't have any interests involved. Even when they were in a relationship, they were like immortals. She just wanted to meet someone she truly liked, someone she could think about getting married to. Xiao Jin looked at Song Suyu and pursed his lips into a faint smile. Suyu, are you anxious about your own matters? You don't have to be anxious. The person you like will appear sooner or later. Song Suyu's love scene was very late, but it wasn't that it didn't exist. Moreover, with the existence of the Song family, Song Suyu didn't need to get married early. She had time to find her true love. How could a girl marry late? An outstanding girl like Song Suyu wouldn't lack pursuers when she was old. I have to thank you for saying that. Song Suyu smiled. I'm not in a hurry to fall in love. I have a lot of things to do and don't have time to manage a relationship. Song Shireen didn't hold back either. She and Song Yanqing had split the position of heir in half. She would take as much as she could. Song Suyu knew very well. Her pursuits were somewhat different from her brother's, so she had been busy overseas in recent years, leaving the domestic affairs to Song Yanqing. It was also because of Song Shireen's fair treatment that Song Suyu had never had any conflicts with his younger brother, Song Yanqing, since they were young. Song Shireen and Song Shireen had never had any conflicts with each other. Xiao Jin nodded. It's good to pursue your own career. Song Suyu said, what about you? What do you want to do after graduation? Xiao Jin, I don't have such pursuits. I opened a fortune-telling shop online. Song Suyu, it was hard to say when faced with such a Buddhist mentality. She knew that Xiao Jin was a little different, so she didn't insist on this topic. She just said, it's good that you have your own choice. The next time we meet will be during the new year. I have to go abroad with my father tomorrow. The Song family was too busy and rarely had time to gather. Chapter 8:16. Xiao Jin and Song Suyu exchanged a few words. In the end, Song Suyu said, you don't have to worry about those things. If there's anything, just tell me in Guanxing. Those who shouldn't disturb you won't come looking for you. She was referring to the Ji family. To them, the matter of the Ji family was not a secret. They all knew that Xiao Jin was Ji Pinggan's granddaughter. Naturally, they also knew about Ji Qiue's fight with Chai Yueli and Ji Fan. In addition, the Ji family had been in chaos recently. Even Ji Sikai had gotten into trouble. Although Xiao Jin was away, it was still a little risky. Xiao Jin naturally wasn't worried, but she didn't refute Song Suyu's good intentions. After the conversation, Song Suyu didn't leave. Second uncle Song Simeon arrived. He still had that wild and unruly look on his face. When he walked over, he saw that Song Suyu and Xiao Jin were both there. He exclaimed, "Yo, are you two whispering to each other?" Song Suyu was still a little amused when he saw his appearance. "Second uncle, you're still in our family. Can't you be more mature? When you came back in the past, you would still tidy up. Why are you like this now? I find it annoying." Song Simeon waved his hand. "Anyway, Guanxing already knows. That's it. It's boring to pretend." In order to show his weakness in front of Song Yanqing, he had to shave and cut his hair every time he came back. He also had to wear a white robe and try to look like he would collapse at any time when he coughed so that Song Yanqing would realize that his second uncle really couldn't handle any work. Now that things were exposed, he didn't need to pretend anymore. Song Suyu snorted and laughed. "Second uncle, you've been so free all these years. You don't have to worry about anything. Look at my father and then look at my brother. Don't you feel guilty at all?" Song Simeon coughed. She knew that she was being unreasonable. "Let's not talk about the past. Besides, I'm really not interested. You can't force me. I'm not good at business. The gallery I opened last year went bankrupt. I have talent but no one appreciates me. That's too much. This is too much." Song Simeon raised his head and looked sad, but he didn't look convincing. Song Suyu said, "You can even draw a baby with a few strokes on a white cloth. It's a miracle that someone appreciates your paintings." Song's face darkened. "How can you say that? How can you say that about a future great artist?" Song Suyu said, 20 years ago, you said that you were a future great artist. Even now, you're still in the future." Song, after being scolded by his niece, he felt. If he wasn't curious about Xiao Jin and Song Yanqing, he wouldn't have come. He didn't want to argue with Song Suyu anymore. He looked inside. "Only you and her are here. Where's Yanqing?" "He's inside. I'm talking to Xiao Jin." "Why is he listening?" TSK, Song Simeon walked into the house and called out, "Yanqing." Song Suyu and Xiao Jin entered the living room of Song Yanqing's house. Song Yanqing heard Song Simeon's call and walked out. He nodded. "Second uncle." Song Yanqing gave him a friendly smile. Song Yanqing looked at his second uncle's unshaven face and realized that he still couldn't accept him. After all, in his memory, his second uncle had always been very steady. His eyelids twitched. Chapter 8:17. Song Simeon walked over. He didn't care about Song Yanqing's reaction. He looked Song Yanqing up and down and sighed. "When I first saw you, I felt that you had changed a little." Song Yanqing smiled gently. "My body has recovered. Naturally, there are some changes. It's not that your body has changed." Song Simeon reached out and patted Song Yanqing's shoulder. "I think you've become... how should I put it? Oh, I mean, immortal-like. You're like the younger version of a swindler on TV. Song Yanqing was speechless. Song Suyu almost burst out laughing. Second uncle, what are you talking about? How does Yanqing look like a swindler? Look at you. You look more like a swindler. Song Yanqing added gently, you've been lying to me for more than 20 years. Song Simeon was speechless. He covered his mouth and coughed dryly. He turned and saw Qiao Jin behind him. After thinking for a moment, he took out a big red packet and handed it to Qiao Jin. Second uncle, I don't have much to give. It's the first time we've met. Give me a red packet. It was a Chinese tradition to give red packets. Song Yanqing nodded at him. Qiao Jin accepted it. It felt like a cardboard shell in his palm. It was obvious that second uncle was really generous. Qiao Jin smiled. Thank you. Song Simeon nodded and waved his hand. All right, you guys rest early. I won't disturb you anymore. I'm going back to my room to rest. Suyu, I'll go with you guys tomorrow. Song Yanqing was a little surprised. So early. Song Suyu was also a little surprised. Second uncle, why don't you stay at home for a few more days? It'll be the new year soon. If you guys leave, what will I do at home? I'll come back for the new year. I recently picked a place with great scenery. I'll go there for a while. With that, Song Simeon left. Song Suyu also said goodbye to Qiao Jin and Song Yanqing and left. After they left, Song Yanqing took the initiative to say to Qiao Jin, it's not that second uncle doesn't want to be in the Guan family, but compared to these, he wants to travel around the world more. When I was young, I heard Dad say that second uncle's biggest wish is to travel around the world, so he has been changing places all these years. They traveled happily in the name of coaxing their nephew. He didn't use the Song Yanqing's money. After the Song family's old man passed away, the family property was divided into several parts. But Song Shirin and Song Shimian were the only ones left. Song Yanqing's aunt got a part of it. As for the other members of the Song family who were not from Old Master Song's lineage, they only received some basic information. Song Mian had given everything she had to Song Mian and Song Henning, leaving only a small portion for herself to eat, drink, and play around the world. For the Song family, she could spend as much money as she wanted. Just those shares alone were enough to make her lose money. The key was that she had handed them over. Drifting clouds and wild cranes, he could be considered to be free and easy. Everyone had different pursuits, and no one could force her. Qiao Jin nodded. It's good. It's a very free life. After saying this, she looked at Song Yanqing, her eyes clear. What about you? Other than everything in the Song family, don't you have anything you like? Song Yanqing only looked at her gently and said in a low and gentle voice, Qiao Jin, I'm the son of the Song family and the heir of the Song family. I have to give up whatever I get. Everything in the Song family needs to be taken care of. My sister can't take care of everything alone. Chapter 8:18. With a big family and a big business, some things weren't as simple as they sounded. As the young master of the Song family, Song Yanqing had to take on his responsibilities. His tone was natural. I've already gotten something that many people can't get in their lifetime. Whether I like it or not, I don't dislike all of this. What about you? You usually go to school and open a fortune-telling shop. Don't you have anything you want to do? Qiao Jin nodded quickly. No, it's too troublesome. To her, everything that required energy was troublesome. She was used to being easygoing and was very obedient. Even if Mu Jinming wanted her to learn how to manage the Mu family business, she didn't want to compete with the three brothers. There was still Mu Qi in front of her. You only know how to be troublesome. Song Yanqing couldn't help but laugh. He reached out and touched Xiao Jin's cheek. It was still soft, like tofu. After kissing her, there were still some changes. His movements were bolder and more natural than before. Xiao Jin didn't care about this. She only said softly, I have to find the 9 array points now. I still don't know what happened to my lost memories. It's already very troublesome. It's still early. Some things will naturally appear when they should. Song Yanqing said, I don't have any premonitions at the moment. He was a spiritual master of speech. Usually, smooth sailing was a good thing. Xiao Jin chatted with Song Yanqing for a while that night. Not long after, Qin Yuan also came and said a few words before leaving. Song Yanqing still went to bed very early. After taking a shower, he fell asleep. Xiao Jin also fell asleep after a while. The next morning, Song Yanqing's family woke up very early. Song Shirin and Song Suyu were busy, and so was Song Yanqing. Xiao Jin also woke up. After breakfast, she was sent to school by the Song family's driver. However, halfway there, they changed directions. She really did receive a message from the Ji family, asking her to go to the main house of the Ji family. Old Master Ji had something to announce. Even if he wanted to announce it, it had nothing to do with her. However, just as Mu Xiangshan had said, Ji Pingan probably wanted to announce the distribution of his shares. There was a high chance that Xiao Jin would be part of it. Otherwise, he wouldn't have called Xiao Jin over. Xiao Jin thought about it and still went. Before she went, she informed Xiao Fei. He really asked you to go. Xiao Fei was a little surprised when she received the call. She heard Xiao Jin ask over the phone, Fei Fei, if you really give it to me, do you think I should take it or not? Xiao Fei hesitated for a moment before asking Mu Xiangshan and Mu Jinming, who were having breakfast. Xiao Jin said that the Ji family called her over and said that they have something to announce. If old Master Ji really gives Xiao Jin some shares, does she want them or not? Of course you should. Mu Xiangshan put down the bowl and said first, don't give Ji Pingan's share to that little thing Ji Fanjing. Xiao Jin is his granddaughter. How can she not have anything? Don't be so kind. Ji Fanjing is still under Chai Yueli's control. If Xiao Jin doesn't want it, the money will all fall into Ji Chiyue and Chai Yueli's hands. How can you let them be happy? Of course you have to take it. Even if you take it and use it for charity, don't let those two take advantage of it. Xiao Fei replied, if it's really given to you, you should take it. Like your grandfather said, you can't let Ji Chiyue and Chai Yueli take advantage of it. Xiao Jin replied lightly, okay. Xiao Jin agreed. She hung up the phone. Musichu and Musilian, who were eating in the living room, were also a little confused. Especially Musilian, who immediately shed tears of envy. Why can't such a good thing happen to me? Chapter 8:19. As soon as he finished speaking, Mu Jinming slapped him again. What does the Ji family's business have to do with you? Mu Xiangshan said leisurely, why? Are you hoping that your father and I will die early so that the money will be yours? Musilian chuckled. Grandpa, what are you talking about? Do you think I'm that kind of person? I'm not just surprised. Did Xiao Jin actually have a pie in the sky? Although he didn't want to acknowledge his biological parents, his biological grandfather was a good person. Even if he didn't raise Xiao Jin, he should still give Xiao Jin a share. Wasn't this just picked up from the ground? Mu Xiangshan said, what's there to be surprised about? Pingan is like that. He didn't know back then, but now that he knows, he will definitely fight with Ji Fan for a share. Sigh, after all, he watched Ji Fan grow up. It's not wrong for Chai Yueli to be his biological grandson in some ways. It's just that Chai Yueli and Ji Chiyue will probably be furious. In the future, when they come over, they will say that there's no one in our family. Why would they be furious? Mu Jinming sneered. Uncle Ji does things fairly. I think Ji Chiyue won't dare to do anything. Didn't you see how angry the first branch was when Ji Sikai almost got into an accident? Xiao Fei was also a little emotional. I didn't expect Jean to become a little rich woman soon. Muzillion, suddenly, he grasped something important. Xiao Jin arrived at the Ji family's mansion. There were quite a lot of people here. In addition to the Ji family, there were also a few outsiders in suits who didn't look like they were from the Ji family. Many people in the Ji family had seen Xiao Jin before. They were a little surprised to see Xiao Jin here. There were quite a lot of people sitting in the hall. Chai Yueli and Ji Chiyue were among them. When they saw Xiao Jin, their faces instantly turned pale. When they turned pale, they suddenly thought of something, and their faces seemed to be cramping. Xiao Jin noticed that Ji Huai was sitting in the center of these people with a pale face. He probably expected something would happen today. Many people looked at Xiao Jin and muttered, not knowing what she was doing here. Everyone knew that the Ji clan's first master was going to announce something, but no one had heard that it had anything to do with Xiao Jin. Ji Sikai was also sitting there. Although he had gotten into a car accident, he seemed to be fine, with one leg crossed over the other. He was wearing a black windbreaker and had a playful expression on his face. When Xiao Jin came over, he pointed to a seat for her. Xiao Jin also took the opportunity to sit down. There were too many people and he couldn't choose a seat, so he didn't greet anyone. Ji Fanjing also looked up at her with a calm expression. No one knew what he was thinking. Right at this moment, the three elders of the Ji clan came out one by one. It was Ji Pingon and his two brothers. The eldest brother was Ji Sikai's grandfather, an old man in his 80s. He walked out shakily and had people support him. He even coughed a few times. After he sat down at the main seat, he saw that almost everyone had arrived. He asked the lawyer beside him to start the announcement. He made a will and gave all his shares to his eldest grandson, Ji Sikai, including important funds, investment shares, and a bunch of industrial companies. He only left some companies for Ji Huai. They wouldn't make much money, but they wouldn't starve him either. It was purely up to his own ability. In other words, the power of the entire Ji clan was completely in Ji Sikai's hands. Ji Huai was as pale as a sheet of paper. Everyone knew this was the result. The lawyer also announced that the shareholders' meeting would be held next week. At that time, Ji Huai would have to be expelled from the company. Chapter 820. This matter greatly disappointed the Ji family's old master. He had completely chosen to hand over the power to his eldest grandson. The second branch couldn't fight for much even if they wanted to, but they also held a lot of power. In the future, it would be Ji Sikai and the second branch fighting among themselves. However, after the lawyer made the announcement, Ji Pingon also stood out. I'm also old. Since Big Brother has already made a decision, then we should also make a decision about the distribution of my assets. He waved his hand, and another lawyer walked out and told him about Ji Pingon's fair will. Ji Pingon held 18% of the shares of the Ji Group's main company and was already a major shareholder. Now, he divided this 18% into two. His grandson, Ji Fan, would fight for half, and his granddaughter, Xiao Jin, would fight for the other half. In other words, in the future, even Xiao Jin would have some say in the G Group's internal affairs. As soon as this news was announced, the rest of the G family exploded. After all, the redistribution of shares involved too many things, especially when they didn't know about Xiao Jin beforehand. This news was even more explosive than the one announced by Ji Sikai's grandfather. Everyone subconsciously looked at Ji Chiyue and Chai Yueli. Seeing their pale faces, Ji Fanjing had expected this and wasn't surprised at all. Chai Yueli immediately retorted, "Dad, this isn't fair. Why don't Chiyue and I have anything? Even if their children were all theirs, now that they were adults, how could they have the right to control Ji Pinggan's things?" Ji Pinggan's expression was calm. "I didn't leave money for you. The properties under my name are all yours and Chiyue's. I've given you enough." Chai Yueli was about to go crazy. The properties were valuable, but how could they be more important than the G Group's shares? Without the shares, they wouldn't even have the right to speak in the G family. There was also the subsequent dividends from the G Group. They wouldn't be able to get a single cent of the huge funds every year. Forget about Ji Fanjing. After all, he was her son who she raised. Xiao Jin was completely disobedient. How could she care about her mother? Chai Yueli's eyes turned red. If it weren't for some misgivings, she would have wanted to strangle Ji Pinggan and Xiao Jin to death. Ji Sikai sneered and said indifferently, "Auntie, it's not like third grandpa didn't give you a chance. You and uncle didn't cherish it, so who can you blame?" Ji Chiyue had failed to live up to expectations and was of no use at all in the Ji family. How could he blame Ji Pinggan for being disappointed? If he had the ability, Xiao Jin and Ji Fan would not have been fighting for the shares today. Chai Yueli's entire body trembled. "You only know how to make sarcastic remarks. Forget about Fanjing." Chai Yueli pointed at Xiao Jin, who had not said a word from the beginning to the end. "What right does she have? She is not in the Ji family, and her heart is not with the Ji family. You dare to give her the shares? Aren't you afraid that she will use these shares to do something detrimental to the Ji family?" A smile slowly bloomed on Xiao Jin's face. "Madam Chai, what are you talking about? I don't understand these things. What can I do to harm the Ji family? I'll just wait for my share of the money." Chai Yueli was so angry that her heart was pounding. Beside her, Ji Chiyue felt more and more indignant. He also stood up. "Dad, I'm not convinced. I have no objections if you want to give it to Xiao Jin, but you can't give the remaining half to Xiao Jin." Ji Pinggan's face sank. "I can distribute my things however I want. What does it have to do with you?" Chapter 821. He looked at Chai Yueli and Ji Chiyue with disappointment. He didn't bother to be polite. "Just like what Sky said, you're such a disappointment. If you didn't disappoint me, would I still be in this state today? Don't you know how many foolish things you and your wife have done? As my biological granddaughter, Xiao Jin was abandoned by you for 20 years. I want to make it up to her. What's wrong with me giving her some shares? Fanjing isn't worried, but you guys are." The other members of the Ji family also had some opinions. Just like Chai Yueli said, no matter what happened in the Ji family, Xiao Jin's heart wasn't with the Ji family. It was too dangerous to own the Ji family's shares. Ji Chiyue was stunned and retorted, "But she doesn't even return to the Ji family. She's with the Mu family now." "If the Mu family, why are you so anxious? What's wrong with the Mu family?" Ji Pinggan said calmly, "I've been with Xiangshan for decades. We're closer than your father." Ji Chiyue, Ji Pinggan didn't give him face, which meant that he had already confirmed it. The will had been notarized. After he passed away, this large sum of money would be fought over by Xiao Jin and Ji Fan. Of course, he also added that if anything were to happen to Xiao Jin or Ji Fan during the competition, he would also give it to Ji Sikai. This was something Ji Sikai didn't expect. However, he was also roasting Ji Sikai. If anything happened to the two of them, wouldn't everyone think that it was Ji Sikai who did it? After all, only Ji Sikai would benefit. Of course, if Ji Sikai was evil, he could do the same. Ji Sikai smiled playfully but didn't feel offended. Xiao Jin didn't care at all. After all, Ji Sikai wouldn't touch her. As for Ji Fanjing, it would be an internal fight in the Ji family. She didn't forget that Ji Fanjing had a problematic biological mother who was related to the He early family. Internal fights between big families were complicated. As long as it didn't involve Xiao Jin, she wouldn't care. No matter how unfair Chai Yueli and Ji Chiyue felt, the majority of the audience acted as if they were watching a show. There were also some who had ulterior motives and quickly took sides to support Ji Sikai. After all, Ji Sikai was the biggest winner today. Xiao Jin was about to leave after hearing the announcement, but Ji Pingon stopped her. Xiao Jin, wait a minute. Xiao Jin stayed behind and talked to Ji Pingon in the side hall of the Ji family. Ji Pingon looked at her and smiled gently and lovingly. Did my sudden announcement make you a little surprised? Don't worry, Sky and I have already made an agreement. He will protect you and Fanjing. You can take these shares, there won't be any danger. What you want to do with them is your own business. Since Grandpa has given them to you, he won't interfere anymore. You can do whatever you want with them, whether you sell them or donate them, it's up to you. He sighed faintly and said, I can only repay what your parents did to you. What's there to talk about? Xiao Jin's eyes were calm. In this matter, you don't have to say such things. Ji Chiyue and Chai Yueli also gave birth to me. It's not wrong for them not to raise me, so there's no need to compensate. Since you think the shares should be given to me, I'll take them. Like he said, what she wanted to do with them in the future was her own business. Chapter 822. Ji Pingon looked at her with a complicated expression. Since you can still think like that, it's really commendable. Your parents are really nothing. He said, I really didn't expect Chai Yueli to treat you like that back then. I always thought that Fanjing. Sigh, anyway, it's all in the past. Now that I've decided on these things, it's a good thing. Now that you have the Mu family to take care of you, I'm relieved. In the future, there might be irrelevant people who come to you. You can ignore them. Including your parents. Xiao Jin nodded. Ji Pingon said with a smile, you've been with the Song family for some time. If you have time, you can bring her to meet me. Xiao Jin thought for a moment and then agreed. Okay. It was not difficult. Song Yanqing would probably agree. Now that she had slowly accepted Ji Pingon, it was not a big deal to bring him to meet her. While Ji Pingon and Xiao Jin were talking, someone walked over angrily. Just by looking at her back, one could tell that it was Chai Yueli. When Chai Yueli saw Xiao Jin's calm expression, she gritted her teeth and said, Dad, I want to talk to her about something. Can you let me talk to her alone for a while? Ji Pingon disagreed. What can't you say in front of me? Chai Yueli was speechless. How could she say those words in front of Ji Pingon? She only said, I'll just talk for a while. Ji Pingon glanced at Xiao Jin. Xiao Jin also said calmly, It's okay, old master. You can sit by the side for a while. I'll talk to her. Chai Yueli would not give up until she jumped into the Yellow River. Ji Pingon nodded and looked at Chai Yueli with a warning gaze. You'd better know your limits. Then, he went elsewhere. When Chai Yueli saw Qiao Jin, she could not hold back the anger in her heart. She gritted her teeth and cursed, "Don't even think about those shares. I can give you money if you want, but these are the Ji family's shares. You have to know that you have no right to take them." Qiao Jin smiled faintly. Even old Master Ji didn't say that. Who are you to say that? You're not qualified to get the shares yet. Chai Yueli almost had a heart attack. Qiao Jin continued, "Since he thinks that I am qualified to take it, then I will take it. What position do you have to say this? Just because you are his daughter-in-law?" Chai Yueli was so angry that her eyes turned red. "If it wasn't for you, if you hadn't appeared, these things would have all belonged to Fan, You wouldn't have gotten anything." After saying this, she actually wanted to slap Qiao Jin in the face. Qiao Jin easily caught her wrist and threw it to the side, causing Chai Yueli to stagger. Her eyes darkened. "You've crossed the line." Chai Yueli felt her hair stand on end from this stare. Her throat felt dry. Just as she was about to speak, a stern voice came from the other side. "What are you doing?" Chai Yueli and Qiao Jin turned their heads. Ji Sikai was standing there, staring at Chai Yueli with a dark expression. Chai Yueli was afraid of Ji Sikai to begin with. When she saw Ji Sikai, the corner of her mouth twitched and she forced a stiff smile. "Sikai. I was just talking to my daughter." "Qiao Jin, I didn't acknowledge you." Chai Yueli's face turned fierce again. Ji Sikai walked over and glanced at Chai Yueli, then at Qiao Jin. His eyes darted back and forth between the two. Suddenly, he sneered and laughed playfully. "Is that so?" Chapter 823. Ji Sikai's voice now sounded a little cold and lazy. "Auntie, why are you so unruly now? This is the Ji family's main residence, not your house." Chai Yueli's face stiffened. Ji Sikai's words clearly distinguished the relationship between the two of them. Ji Sikai didn't care about her expression and said, "Since third grandpa has chosen to give the shares to Fan Jing and Qiao Jin, why don't you hold on to Fan Jing properly? Don't let your son run away before you get your daughter. You're not his biological mother. If his biological mother comes looking for you, won't your efforts be in vain? Auntie, don't you think I'm right?" Ji Sikai's words hit the nail on the head. Chai Yueli's face couldn't be described as ugly. Why did she marry into the Ji family back then? Why did she get close to Ji Qiue? Wasn't it all for these? In the end, it was indeed like drawing water with a bamboo basket. However, the bamboo basket was still in her hands. Even if it couldn't hold water, it could still hold other things. Ji Fanjing still acknowledged her as his mother. As long as Ji Fanjing acknowledged her, it wasn't like she and Ji Qiue couldn't live together anymore. However, this was still far from what she wanted. She had waited for so many years for Ji Pingin's will. She didn't expect him to be so heartless. He didn't leave his biological son at all and gave it all to his grandson and granddaughter. Most importantly, that was Ji Pingin's money. They had no right to interfere. As long as he made the will when he was alive, no one could do anything about it. Even if something happened to him and he suddenly passed away, the money would only be in Qiao Jin's hands sooner. At least he was still alive. As long as one was alive, there was still a chance for change. At that thought, Chai Yueli glared at Qiao Jin indignantly and quickly left. Qiao Jin looked at her back view as she left, deep in thought. She said that this matter wasn't over yet. The dispute with the Ji family was probably also here. She was destined to not be peaceful after taking the shares. Even if she didn't intend to touch the shares at all. Don't you think she's a little too crazy? Ji Sikai's voice drifted over. Xiao Jin turned around and saw Ji Sikai rubbing his chin as he stared at Chai Yueli's departing figure. She must be a ruthless person to be able to come up with the idea of swapping you with Ji Fan. It's a pity that she's just a flower vase. Actually, she's quite compatible with Uncle. What do you think? Xiao Jin remained silent for a while before saying, "Congratulations." Now that Ji Sikai held great power in his hands, it was indeed worthy of a congratulation. Hearing this, Ji Sikai nodded seriously. Thank you. Congratulations to you too. In the eyes of others, Xiao Jin hadn't done anything and was still raised by the Mu family. Ji Pingan didn't care about this and gave her half of the shares. It was enough to see that Ji Pingan really liked her and doted on her. Ji Chiyue and Chai Yueli had stayed by Ji Pingan's side for more than 20 years and didn't get anything. But based on their actions, who could say anything? Ji Sikai glanced at her. You want to leave? The Ji family is having a party tonight. Do you want to attend? Xiao Jin shook her head. No need. She wasn't in the mood to attend the Ji family's party. Now that she had taken the shares, she would probably have to discuss it with the Mu family. She would rather go back and watch Mu Xiangshan and the others complain about her luck. Seeing that she refused, Ji Sikai didn't force her. All right, you decide. I'll get someone to send you back to school. Do you still have classes today? Chapter 8:24. Xiao Jin agreed. Ji Sikai wanted to send her off personally, but he had just taken over and had many things to do. And it wasn't just Xiao Jin who was being melodramatic. He also wanted to quarrel with his father. Ji Hui didn't get anything this time because of his illegitimate son. He was as miserable as Ji Chiyue. At this moment, he didn't find Ji Sikai pleasing to the eye. Xiao Jin was sent back to school by the Ji family's driver. Not long after, Song Yanqing called her with a smile. You took half of Ji Pingan's grandfather's shares? His tone was affirmative. There was no need to say anything. As soon as the news was announced, many people in the Ji family had already spread it. The circle immediately began to pay attention to Xiao Jin, who had kept a low profile until now and had been raised in the Mu family. Xiao Jin said, "Yes." Song Yanqing paused. "It's a good thing that you took it. Don't have any other thoughts. I know your personality. You'll think that you have nothing to do with the Ji family. But for Ji Pingan's grandfather, it's not a good thing that all the shares are in Ji Fanjing's hands. He listens to Chai Yueli too much. Besides, they can't hold it firmly. The Ji family's internal affairs were so complicated. If it wasn't for Ji Sikai's ability, it was impossible for Ji Chiyue and the others to hold the shares firmly. The key was that both of them were idiots. They could only rely on Ji Fanjing to fight for a little. Xiao Jin smiled. Then he thinks I can hold it firmly. You're different. Song Yanqing chuckled. You have me behind you. Have you forgotten? Everyone in the capital knew that Xiao Jin's boyfriend was Song Yanqing. Offending her was offending Song Yanqing. No one would ask for trouble. Xiao Jin smiled and said, I forgot that you're still useful. After all, she hadn't dealt with the disputes of these rich families. Her disputes all came from the world of spiritual readers. To her, the world of spiritual readers was still more fun. Money was too meaningless. Song Yanqing sighed softly, then I don't have much of a presence as a boyfriend. I know you're very strong, but if you look down at this world, there are still many interesting places. Just treat them as entertainment for you. Xiao Jin, they're too bored. They only have money in their eyes. Why don't they find something fun to do? If I have time now, I can go visit Imo Jiang on set. It's more interesting to watch her film. After a pause, she said, her acting skills are probably terrible. She only knows how to memorize her lines, but she doesn't know how to act. The high priest had no talent for acting. This was the answer she got when she went to visit him. She was too embarrassed to tell Imo Jiang. These words caused Song Yanqing to chuckle. That laughter was like the vibration of zither strings, falling into people's hearts. She definitely didn't know that you would say that about her. What's the matter with the person who's creating hype with her? Is she in love? This wasn't Song Yanqing gossiping about other people's affairs. After all, Imo Jiang's identity was different. She carried a blood feud with her but lost her memory. She was an unstable factor. Now that she had entered the entertainment industry, she was so familiar with creating scandals with others. It was really incomprehensible. She said that there's something wrong with that person. She saw some abnormal problems. Xiao Jin thought and said, I guess she met someone in her memory who affected her, but it wasn't enough to make her remember the past. I don't plan to let her remember now. Some things are better to let nature take its course. If you push her too hard, what if she wakes up and only wants revenge? Chapter 825. If she wanted revenge, she wanted to restore her country. Now, there was no country for her to restore. That's true. Finding something for her to do won't make her feel bored. Song Yanqing said, let me tell you something else. There's some news about Wanyan Yunhu who ran abroad, but he's too far away. That's not the territory of the Huaxia spiritualists, so we can't catch him. There's also someone who's causing trouble. There's a high probability that someone is stirring up trouble with the demonized spiritual seed. I even think that it's not the first time they've done this. Using the demonized spiritual seed to feed the demonized spiritualists? Xiao Jin narrowed her eyes. I've thought about it before. If the demonized spiritual seed has any positive effects, it's only useful to me. Normal spiritualists definitely won't have a way to use it. If that's the case, she muttered, give me the last address of her whereabouts. I'll go abroad to take a look. Song Yanqing frowned. What did you think of? I think they're rivals. If there's a clue, I should go and take a look. I can't just let him hide and ignore me. Song Yanqing thought for a few seconds, then said decisively, no, give me a few days. I'll make some work arrangements and go with you. Xiao Jin smiled. Why are you always worried about me? I'll be fine. If something happens, I'll run. Song Yanqing said helplessly and dotingly, it's not that I'm worried about you. It's my fault as a boyfriend to always let you charge into battle alone. I'm a spirit master of speech and will always be of some use to you. If I feel that something is wrong, I can tell you immediately. Besides, after the fan incident, I haven't had any clues for the next step. I'll go with you and see if there's any breakthrough abroad. Xiao Jin wanted to look for her memories, but so did he. He still couldn't figure out why there were traces of him in the Rakshasa world. The Rakshasa world had been watching him closely. He had to figure out what was going on. Xiao Jin heard this and directly answered, okay. After hanging up, Xiao Jin went to class. She didn't have classes in the afternoon, so she went back to the Mu family. Of course, she had to go back to school at night. She couldn't always ask for leave. Even the homeroom teacher began to ask her what she was busy with all day long. As a student, of course, learning was the prerequisite. The Musilian family was also very excited. Xiao Jin had really obtained the Ji family's shares. For Xiao Fei and the others, this was one more reason to worry about her. Xiao Jin was now a rich woman. By grabbing the rich woman's thigh, he was grabbing his own future. So when he got the news that Xiao Jin was coming back in the afternoon, he immediately waited at home. Even when Musichu asked him to play billiards, he didn't go. It was rare for him to be able to relax. Musichu ignored him and went off on his own. Xiao Fei was puzzled. Why don't you play billiards with your brother? Musilian looked solemn. What's the point of going out to play every day? Xiao Fei, is this something you can say? The world is about to change. Mu Xiangshan mercilessly exposed him. Do you believe that he's that kind of person? He knows that Xiao Jin has become a rich woman, so what kind of tricks are you thinking? It's not like Xiao Jin has a part in it right now. What you think all day long has nothing to do with you. Musilian's expression was serious. Grandpa, what are you talking about? How can I be that kind of person? Chapter 8:26. Musilian denied it 3 times. I don't even know what you're talking about. Xiao Fei's expression changed. She reached out and pinched Mu Qilian's arm hard. You're so unruly. If Xiao Jin's grandfather finds out about this, he'll think that you're cursing him. Besides, this is Xiao Jin's money. It has nothing to do with you. You'd better watch yourself. It's not like our family can't afford to raise you. Why are you still having such ideas all day long? Oh, it hurts. Musilian sucked in a breath of cold air and looked at Xiao Fei in disbelief. When did I do that? How can you think of your son as someone who doesn't know his place? I just don't want to go out. Can't I stay at home with you guys? Xiao Fei said, who wants you to stay with us? We just know that your sister is coming back. As they spoke, Xiao Jin walked in from outside. When he saw Xiao Jin, Xiao Fei's expression changed. He immediately smiled. Jin, you're back. Xiao Jin nodded. He wasn't surprised to see Musilian and Mu Xiangshan. He only said, Qilian, why are you at home every day? Musilian's face darkened. Can't I be at home? Am I not a part of this family? In the past, when I went out, you guys said that I didn't go home every night. Now that I'm at home, you're saying that I don't go out. What do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? Xiao Fei said, why are you so talkative now? Mu Xiangshan said, you're so talkative. You're like a bitch. Musilian. His grandfather had the cheek to say that to him. Xiao Jin chuckled. Musilian decided to ignore the blow. He looked at Xiao Jin and flashed his standard 8-tooth smile. I heard that you inherited a part of Ping An's grandfather's fortune. He used a rather subtle way of saying that part. Xiao Jin glanced at him. Yeah, what does it have to do with you? Musilian, aren't you going to treat me to a meal? Xiao Jin, why? Musilian, seeing that Musilian was speechless, Xiao Fei immediately said, that's right. Why should I treat you to a meal? It has nothing to do with you. Mu Xiangshan looked at Musilian. You only know how to poach Xiao Jin. Why don't you poach Ji Sikai instead? He has complete control over the Ji family. Wouldn't it be better for you to follow him? Unfortunately, he doesn't like men. Musilian. Xiao Fei, what kind of words are you spouting? Xiao Fei ignored the two of them and asked Xiao Jin worriedly, what about Chai Yueli and Ji Chiyue? I heard that old Master Ji didn't leave anything for them and only let you and Ji Fan fight for the money. Would they be willing to accept that? You can't say that. Xiao Jin said slowly, he left a few houses for them. The price isn't low either. If they know what's good for them, they can live the rest of their lives without worrying about food or clothing. How can houses be compared to shares? Musilian almost died from laughter. He slapped his thigh and said, if I were Chai Yueli and her husband, would definitely fall out with them on the spot. Xiao Jin said, that's what Chai Yueli thinks. She even wants me to return the shares. Pfft. Xiao Fei couldn't help but say, she's really shameless. It's fine if it's hers, but this is all given to you by Old Man Ji. This is the world that Old Man Ji fought for. What does it have to do with her? Besides, doesn't she have a son? Chapter 827. Xiao Fei snorted. She was the one who abandoned you for her son. Now that she got what she wanted, Ji Fan got half of the shares. What's there for her to be dissatisfied about? Without Xiao Jin, Ji Fan would have gotten all the shares. Musilian knew about this. Will she be satisfied? Of course she won't. I think she'll come to our house to make trouble. Maybe she'll cry and throw a tantrum like last time. She can cry even more than you, Mom. As soon as she finished speaking, Xiao Fei reached out and slapped her again. Mu Xiangshan, on the other hand, praised his grandson, that little brain of yours has finally been enlightened. He actually knows how to analyze the situation after the incident. Xiao Jin said, if she comes, tell her you're not at home. Don't let her in. If she cries at the door, let her cry. Take a picture and send it to the media. Everyone, Xiao Jin was really vicious. Xiao Jin wasn't being vicious. Xiao Jin just felt that if Chai Yueli really did such a thing, it meant that she was shameless. Did she need to save her own face? Musilian pointed at her. Look, she's showing her vicious side after taking the money. Slap. This time, it was another slap. Musilian didn't learn his lesson. He hugged his head and stood up angrily. I'm going to look for my brother. I'm so bored. Xiao Fei said, get lost. Xiao Jin also talked about him and Song Yanqing. By the way, Fei, I'll be going abroad with Song Yanqing in a few days. Going abroad again. Xiao Fei was a little hesitant. But when he heard that he was going with Song Yanqing, he didn't object. Go ahead if you want. Seeing that Xiao Jin's grades were good, Xiao Fei didn't care much about the school results. Besides, she couldn't do anything about it. Mu Xiangshan clicked his tongue and stood up. It's good to be young. With such a sigh, he left. In the evening, Xiao Jin stayed at the Mu family's house for dinner, and then returned to school. She stayed in school for the next few days. Song Yanqing arranged for them to meet in 5 days. At that time, he and Xiao Jin would go abroad together. However, before it was time, Xiao Jin received a call from Meng Qingyu. She was a little dumbfounded. Big Boss Xiao, didn't you ask us to capture a demonized girl who tried to slim herself down? There's a problem again. Xiao Jin frowned slightly. What's wrong now? Meng Qingyu said, she seems to have demonized again. It's hard to say. Should I come to you first? Sister He Yao and the others have gone to capture him. When Xiao Jin heard this, he said, okay. She met up with Meng Qingyu. The moment he saw Xiao Jin, Meng Qingyu immediately said, when we captured Fang Shuolan last time, we found out that you had taken her spirit seed. She became an ordinary person, but she had never killed anyone and was very scared. This was the first time we dealt with something like this. After locking her up for a while, the higher-ups decided to let her go. After all, her ability didn't seem like it would kill anyone, but we still sent people to keep an eye on her. We didn't expect that something would happen here. After she returned, she demonized again in less than 2 days. She even ran away. In 2 days, she lost so much weight that she changed shape. Because her appearance was completely different, we didn't catch her immediately. When Xiao Jin heard this, he frowned and said, "Second demonization." Generally speaking, this situation was very rare. Even if she took the spirit seed of a demonized person, the Rakshasa realm would take it back. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.